Nope.
No?
No. No, hang
Wait.
on. Don't go on yet. I think. All right, we're ready to go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Rochester Planning Commission here on August 3rd, 2020. Glad everyone could make it tonight in spite of the great weather and the vacation time and all. And we have a quorum. So with that, we'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Absolutely. Chairman McGee.
Here.
Vice Chairman Lord is excused. Mayor Vixen.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem and Secretary Bavacqua.
Here.
Commissioner Clark Martin is excused. Commissioner Gosson.
Here.
Commissioner Hauser.
Here.
Commissioner King is expected. Commissioner Stone
Here.
is,
Sorry, King.
oh, okay, great. Commissioner
Yes,
Stone is expected. We have a
Very good.
quorum.
So we have a quorum. Okay, please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Which stands
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Just to give the typical introduction you're used to hearing, this is a virtual meeting of the Rochester Planning Commission. This meeting is permitted not in person as a result of an executive order from the governor signed early on in the COVID crisis, and it's important to know that the actions taken by the planning commissioners at this meeting count. This actually stands as an official meeting for the period of time until things settle down with COVID and we're allowed to meet in person again. For those of you from the general public, there should be a phone number displayed for you on the television screen. If you wish to join the meeting or make comments, please feel free to call that number and someone will answer and help you get connected as part of the meeting. Number 3 is public comment. And at this point, I'm going to ask Sienna if you've received any public comment, either in person or electronically.
Yes, I have. I received public comment for the 1205 North Main and the Riverfront place.
So you want to hang on to them until those items are called?
Yes.
Okay. And any other public comment at this point? All right, number 4, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of July 23rd, 2020. I ask the commissioners if you received a copy and if you have any questions, corrections, deletions, etc. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
And do we have support?
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any other discussion? The roll call, please.
Vixen.
Yes.
Bavacqua.
Yes.
Gosson.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
McGee.
Yes.
I think I got everyone.
Okay. Next item, number 5, consideration of a site plan for the City Hall entry vestibule located at 406th Street. Madam Planner.
Video, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pulling up the site plan for everybody to see. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. At the city's request, we reviewed a proposal to add an approximately 125 square foot building addition to City Hall, which is located in the O1 district. The proposed addition is to create a covered vestibule for entry into the City Hall. The present configuration allows for the main hallway to be exposed to the elements every time the door is open, and installation of this vestibule area creates an enclosed space for safer entry and also to regulate temperature. Municipal buildings are permitted as a special exception use in any zoning district per the ordinance. And the main city hall is an existing special exception unit. So the proposed addition does not require new special exception approval. It's just an expansion of an existing use. This addition does not impact vehicular access in any way. With regard to pedestrian access, there is an existing wide concrete paved sidewalk area here. Some of that will be covered by this vestibule, but the rest of the sidewalks will remain, and any damage done to it will be repaired as required. As required by ADA, the building will remain barrier-free accessible. With regard to off-street parking, the addition is not generating the need for any additional parking. Existing parking suffices to meet the needs. The addition is located in an area that's already got concrete. The only change is going to be the existing benches that are there on brick pavers currently here are going to be relocated to a new area. So any disturbance to the landscaping will be fixed as part of the proposal. The proposed addition is constructed entirely of glass and steel. And we had asked the city's engineers, AEW, that is handling the project, to provide a colored rendering. And this is in your packet. This is how the entry is going to look. No new lighting is being proposed as part of the addition. And the two existing benches, as I previously mentioned, will be relocated and the landscaping restored in the areas. Based on our review of the proposal, it is our recommendation that Planning Commission grant approval for the proposed addition to City Hall at 406th Street. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Is this heated? Blaine, I don't know if you can hear me.
It's not. This is it's an airlock.
Yes, I got it. Commissioners, any questions for the planner?
None.
Okay, this is pretty straightforward. So with that, is there anyone interested in making a motion? This would be to grant site plan approval to the city.
Motion to approve.
Who made the motion?
Gasson.
Gasson.
Mr. Gasson, is there support?
Support.
Support.
Okay, Maureen, I'll let you figure out who came in first there.
Right. Okay. Gasson,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Yeah. there we go.
Bamaco,
Yes.
Vixen. Vixen?
You're on mute.
Sorry, yes. Yes. Triple
Hauser?
Yes.
Okay. McGee?
Yes.
Stone?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good
Mr.
luck
Chairman,
with your project.
May I go backwards with a question, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I'll give this an easy one.
It's an easy question. Are the doors hands-free, automated approach opening?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. All right, item number 6, consideration of a site plan for proposed multifamily project to be located at 1205 North Main Street. Video.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The project is called the Brownstones on Main Street, and I will pull up the site plan. Here we are. At the city's request, we have done a preliminary review of a request from Mr. Schneider to construct 2.5-story buildings with 2 residential units in each, for a total of 10 residential units. The site is located, you're all familiar with it, it's located at the northwest corner of North Main and Ferndale Street intersection and is zoned O2, which is restricted office district. The Planning Commission is familiar with this site. The applicant had received site plan and special exception approval in 2015 for a 2-story mixed-use development, which had 5,500 square feet of office space and 12,000 square feet of residential space with 8 units. Subsequently, in 2018, the applicant received approval for a 3-story mixed-use development with reduced office space, which was 3,100 square feet, and 6 residential condo units. For various reasons, neither of these projects was built. At this time, the applicant is submitting a new proposal with residential uses only. He did appear before you earlier this year, a few months ago, to present a concept plan. Two-family dwellings are permitted as a principal land use in the O2 district by the zoning ordinance, but are subject to the requirements of the RT or the two-family residential district. This is a preliminary review, so I've just noted some comments and issues of concern which need to be addressed. First of all, the existing structures within 100 feet, I do see it over here. Now, the height of those structures also need to be noted. The site plan notes that the existing access drive of Main Street and Ferndale both will be taken out. So all access to the site is only off the alley. Now, the exact right-of-way width of the alley, even on the west side, must be clearly delineated so we have an idea of what kind of turn movements vehicles will have while exiting the site. Now, the plan shows a concrete dumpster pad over here. Details of an enclosure on that have not been shown. But there is a section in the zoning ordinance, section 2807, which clearly states, I'll quote it, all areas used for storage of trash and other waste products shall be screened from public view from a street or alley and from adjoining residential district. Furthermore, subsection 3 of the same section states, in all office and business districts, which is O1, O2, B1, and CBD, no enclosure shall be permitted within 10 feet of the right-of-way of a street or alley that provides access to the side or rear of the building. So based on what the ordinance says, this dumpster pad cannot be located over here. It has to be relocated, move forward, and a minimum setback of 10 feet is required, and that 10 feet area and the 10-foot area needs to be landscaped. The landscaping along Ferndale, if you look at the landscape plan, I'll scroll to it. It is basically a mix of boxwoods, a few arborvitae. Both plants are generally used for screening purpose and not for adding or enhancing a site itself. These are the kind of trees, maple trees, that are used to actually enhance a site. So our recommendation is that a better landscape plan be considered to enhance the frontage along Ferndale. Now, the landscape plan has shown no landscaping at all along the north property line. This is a band area, and to the north is an office building, and what we have over here is an access drive. So between this unit and the access drive, there is nothing except a narrow patch of grass with light poles on it. Our recommendation is that some evergreen trees or something be added to this area to soften the transition from a residential use to an office use. We need clarification if these buildings are barrier-free accessible. I see only a 4-foot wide sidewalk. I'm not sure how that works, so I would look to the applicant to explain that. All proposed building materials and colors need to be clearly labeled on the elevations. Now, the side elevations for each building is also required. We have a front elevation, and then we have an elevation of Ferndale. Now, the distance separation between these buildings is only 3 feet. Now, 3 feet is to be maintained as lawn area. Considering the height of these structures and a 3-foot separation, it is going to give the illusion of narrow tunnels. So our concern is clarification regarding what are the building code limitations. When the separation distance between residential units is just 3 feet, what kind of code do they have to adhere to with respect to the side yards? The maximum permitted building height in the RP district is 35 feet or 2.5 stories. I believe the applicant does meet it. It is noted as 34 feet to the midspan. However, I would like to see the finished grade over here and the actual grade over there so that I can verify the height. Now, the architecture, as you can see over here, attempts to create a different identity for each of these buildings. So they sort of look unique. Even the window shapes are different. So each of the units will have its own distinct appearance. 3 of these are shown with peaked roof on Main Street. But if you look at the side elevation along Ferndale, this is the north elevation. I will scroll down to show you. This is going to be the elevation along Ferndale. So this wall is approximately 65 to 75 feet long. It is a solid brick wall. It has got no relief features whatsoever. In fact, if you look at the front of the building and the fact that these raised roof lines, it looks like a completely different building from the front and from the side. So some kind of transition needs to be done with our recommendation that maybe this peak can be wrapped around and stepped down over here so that it doesn't look quite so abrupt like a faux gable over here. and also some kind of detail in brick or so to actually enhance. Because of the grade change here, the landscaping you're going to have is probably going to be just this tall. You're still going to have the mass of a big brick wall in front of you. So something needs to be done to enhance this facade. Information regarding site lighting, including any manufacturer's cut sheet detail, needs to be provided, and also note of any signage. While the proposed two-family dwelling style is a desired style of dwelling, we don't have too many of these in the city, and it is a type of home that will appeal to young families too. Our concerns are regarding some key elements of the site plan, specifically limiting all access to the site only off of the alley in the back, which abuts single-family residential uses further to the west. The fact that the dumpster pad is literally at the alley right of way, and you have dwellings on this side, all over the site. That is a concern. And also the lack of any kind of enhanced landscaping in this area. So then the applicant proposed as a concept plan, this is a very desirable plan. We think it's an innovative type of housing for the city. So I would recommend that the applicant revisit some of the design elements on this proposal, and subject to those issues and any concerns being raised by the Planning Commission tonight, being addressed on revised and dated set of plans, we would recommend that you place it on your next available agenda for consideration of site plan approval. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for the planner? Okay, is Mr. Schneider or his representative present?
I am present.
Okay, I can't see you just yet.
Can you see me yet?
Vidya, if you could stop sharing the screen.
Okay, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you.
Becoming a habit.
Yes, it is. All right. So to address the comments that Vidya outlined, I have some additional information to provide to go over some of the issues that she raised. So the existing structures within 100 feet, we do have them on the engineering plan that, where the buildings are, which I believe Vidya asked for a specific height of those buildings. Is that correct, Vidya?
I just wanted to make sure that the grades are confirmed so that we know that the building height is within the ordinance limits.
All right. It says existing structure. So on item number 1, you wanted the height of those buildings?
Oh, yes. Yes,
okay.
please.
We will provide those for the next meeting. That's not an issue. As for the number 2, you're asking for the width of the alley. We'll notate that on there. Let me pull up my planning here.
You do have it shown as 16 feet. We would just like to see the limit on the west side, where exactly it lies. You have shown your property line. I want to see what the exact 16-foot width looks like.
Okay, and that's existing, and we're adding, if you can see this piece right here, we are adding that to the paved portion too, so we'll be getting wider. So I'm assuming that's a 2 or 3 foot span at the widest as it goes down.
I'm going to pull up, I'm sorry, Mr. Schneider, I'm going to pull up the site plan so the Planning Commission can follow along. It's a little difficult to follow if they don't have the plan in front of them. So please go ahead.
I'm not sharing the plan right now.
Yes, I'm sharing it, but when you describe something, I'll point it out on the plan. You said you're adding some span to the alley where I'm pointing with my cursor.
I thought I was sharing my screen, but I guess I'm not.
Is your screen coming through? I will stop sharing.
Well, I tried to share. I can, but this is fine. We'll put it up here. Okay, let's do that.
Okay, I stopped.
All right, so this section right here, that's being widened to the existing alley. So it will be getting wide. So that's our property line right there coming down, and we'll be paving that and widening that, and we'll be picking up the curb from the property to the north and connecting it to our property. So I believe you also asked into you wanted the width of, let's see here. Were you asking for this? It's 36 feet from the alley to the garage. I believe that was the second part of number 2. It's notated right here on this plan. So I just for clarification.
Yes.
You see that right there?
Yes, I was asking for the distance from your property line to the west dwelling, the alley
to this way, to the house. Okay,
yes,
and we'll provide that. Not a problem. All right, so number 3, let's talk about we were not planning, since these are residential, per right, they can have garbage pickup from the alley side, where the current residents are also have garbage pickup. This pad was only put in here specifically for to put their canisters, if they so chose to put their canisters there or pick up from the trash truck. We plan on putting in our condo docks that no trash cans except on trash day are allowed to either be on the west side of the garages. They have to either be in the garage units or they have to be on the east side of the garage units. So no one can see them as unsightly. So they won't be, and that'll be codified in the condo docs. So number 4, I believe that addressed your dumpster concern. So
There
number
will not
4,
be a dumpster. Is that correct?
there will not be a dumpster. That is not intent since it's residential.
Is it possible that you would move the dumpster pad slightly to the east if it's meant only to keep cans and put in some form of green along the west property line to actually separate it?
Yes, in fact, we can pull this out because I don't know if there's enough space for all those for the units. And I'm assuming people are going to take it from the garage and put the dumpster right here on the curb for the truck. So
I don't think you should offer that. I think it's just going to get cluttered.
Okay, so I agree with you on my landscape plan. Let me pull it up. We're already adding some trees here. We're calling for Austin pines. We're open to kind of moving this down, putting additional trees in this area. But right now we have them planned for some pine trees. Give it some height and give it some width to break up this driveway right here. Specifically regarding the arborvitae. So the issue that we have, which if I go back to this plan, is by putting additional higher trees here, and I'll address your blank wall in a minute. This is the Ferndale side. These are all windows on this side, but additionally, the reason we put arborvitaes, let me get to it. These arborvitaes right here is we're trying to get a living wall here. From Ferndale side, we're trying to screen this area specifically from pedestrian traffic, where they don't see this side. So this is our screening opportunity. This one right here too, where we're by the deck. The reason these are arborvitaes are for the same purposes, to provide additional screening for the residents so as you look north, you're not looking at everybody's deck. So that's why those specifically were chosen. These will be all annuals and stuff like that within this area. We're trying to get some greenery in here with the windows, and I'll show you how the windows work on the south side elevation. We can't have too much height here because of that. So we're kind of limited on what we can put there for height wise. But to be specific, we have these existing maple trees on the border, the city property, basically, that are mature trees and take up a significant portion of the sun during the summer. So you're not going to get a lot of sun to put in if we can't overpack it with large trees, because these are already mature trees on site. Do you have any comments? From what I just said, do you have any questions based off of that?
No, I'm curious to see the windows you're talking about because I didn't see them on the elevation. So
and that's fine. I'm almost there. Number 5, landscaping plan to the north property line. So if we look at the north property line, we had a landscaping easement with the north property owner. This has already been landscaped. We've already put in flowering pear trees and arborvitaes throughout this area. So there's lights, there's arborvitaes, there's a break with a flowering pear, then another row of arborvitaes, then flowering pear, arborvitaes. So that's already been installed per our agreement with the northern neighbor.
Do you have photos of that?
Say again, please.
Do you have photos of that to show us?
No, but I can provide those photos for the next meeting.
Is
That would
any
be
of
great.
that on your property?
No, it is not on our property. We put it, we had the agreement with, because this was a hill here originally. So to knock down the wall that was there and bring down the grade on this property, we entered into the agreement with the northern property holder to do that and then to add the greenery on his site. So if we match that, it's all it is they're just going to grow into each other, basically.
Would you please provide a copy of the easement one more time for the files,
Sure.
just so we can ensure that the landscaping will be there in perpetuity and not taken out?
Sure, I can do
Yeah,
that.
absent his agreement with the owner to the north, shouldn't that lawn area be landscaped?
No, we need to have a walking, I'm sorry, this is Nick, Mr. Chairman. You want to keep, that's a formal berm. It's got nice balance to it. So we don't want to, you'd be up on the building and draining into the building. So we want that green space there so that they could have a drain in the ground if they needed it.
Could I suggest then a note be added to the plan that discusses the joint agreement and its terms?
Good idea.
Clarify barrier-free number 6. This is residential to be sold. So we're not required to provide ADA accessibility to the site since they're going to be personal residences. Number 7, we have not formally picked all the material on the building. Let me get to that. We have not formally picked all this. We are doing brick. We'll either have limestone or cast concrete throughout all the buildings. So by the next meeting, everything will be detailed per your requests. We have also chose, based off of this picture, the elevations that we're choosing are specifically, we're keeping this in the middle. We're keeping this false gable here. This gable on either side, because we didn't like the look either from the side elevations. So we're going to remove these and it'll be flat with this cornice detail on these other buildings except for this. So since this is in the middle, it's a little bit of a different character, and it's far enough from a visual perspective that you're not going to see that it's a false front by removing these other two.
Between the walls between the units, are there any windows or other features on those walls, or they're strictly blank?
Yeah, we have fire limitations. So let's look at specifically, since that seems to be a big question, let me get to the right. Pardon me. All right, so let's look at the elevations. So this elevation, all the buildings are basically the same, except for the front, the bay windows in the front. They're all going to be the same. There's not going to be, the building envelope is the building envelope with all 3 buildings. So we chose the north building and as the representation of all the buildings. So because this is an open area, I'm not restricted by fire. So all the windows will be facing the north on this building. And then that's why it's the northern elevation. On the southern elevation, this is a firewall. So this will be on the south elevation. And if you look at the plans, so this is the northern building. This is my firewall. This is my firewall next to it. I have windows, the same windows that are on the north side are now on the south side on building number 2. And then I have on building number 3, I have windows on the north side again with a firewall on the south side of building number 4. I have another firewall on the north side of building number 5 with windows. I take that back. That's windows, yeah. So these are 5 feet. So this is windows, this is windows. And then on the south side, that would be a firewall. And then on the north side, the last building is a firewall. And then on the south side would be my windows wall. So if you have to look at this elevation as the last building as really the southern elevation of the last building. So we're flipping the windows depending on where we're at.
I would suggest, Mr. Schneider, that on the elevation sheet, you actually label it as building 1, 2, 3, 4, and say that this is the north elevations for building 1, 3, and 5. This is the elevation, because when it comes to construction, we don't want to have an ambiguity for which wall was supposed to have the windows or not, because if the blank wall ends up as the facade on Ferndale, it'll be a problem.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. That's a good suggestion, Vidya, but just I can't have any openings on a 3-foot.
Understood, understood. Just want to make sure that we are clear on
That we're
where the
clear.
windows are going into each building.
I agree with you I agree with you wholeheartedly. We'll make that happen.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes,
are those egress windows?
yes, so they will be egress windows, because it's halfway under the ground. So the elevation changes. And in these renderings, in reality, if I go back to the site plan, this is the highest point. I drop 10 feet from the back corner, the northwest corner, to the sidewalk. That's a 10-foot drop. So and then I drop like 15 feet from the northwest corner to the southwest corner. So the idea is, again, even though it's not represented fully in the plans, these buildings are not going to look like that. See how that the top of the building is straight across? It's not ever going to look like that. If you take this point to get to this point, you're going to be at least 3 to 5 feet higher. So this building's going to be the highest, then this building's going to be lower, 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 lower until you get back, so it's going to be on a slope. Each building is stepped back too. You can't see it. The architect put the buildings all in line here, but on my engineering is better. There's going to be a setback. Each building's set back a little bit. So building number 1 is out, building number 2 is in, building number 3 is out, based off of I'm on an angle for Main Street, so forth and so on. But I'm trying to not only get height difference, but I'm also trying to get, I don't want it to look like one massive facade on Main Street. I want to get depth within the buildings. These are pushed back too far. The engineering's pushed back too far too. I have a footing for the staircase up. This footing is back here. We are not putting a footing, I'm sorry, yeah, it's back here. We are not putting a footing for this patio. This will be landscape blocks in here. So we're going to add more space from the back, and we're going to push these buildings up a little bit. That's my 25-foot line right there. So the only question I have is I can gain maybe 10 feet here, 7 feet, is I can put in my condo docs that this is unbuildable space. I need a footing for this staircase up here. I would like to bring these buildings closer to the 25-foot, even if my foundation touches. So I'm really looking comment from the Planning Commission if this would be something that you would think would be appropriate for this building. I can limit in the condo docs that you could never cover these porches at all. But it would provide additional space in the back. And this would be too far out. So by the time you look at this this is probably almost 50 feet from my lot line to this building right here. And that's just going to look, those buildings are going to look way too far back from Main Street.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Greg, could you look down towards the 4th building? It says 25-foot setback. It's in farther than you're pointing. You're pointing at a water main, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a 25-foot right there.
There you go. So you don't have a whole lot of room to move it forward unless it was the stairwell, that's okay.
That's still like 10 feet.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
From here to there, that's still like 10 feet. And thanks, Nick. I appreciate you.
That's okay.
So again, you're still looking at a significant setback from Main Street, and it would look different than the property to the north. It'd be way further back, and my design or my goal would kind of be make it more even with the property to the north on their setback. And this is an open staircase. I'll have some covering here, right there, but this is going to be an open staircase. Is that something that the Planning Commission would consider as an acceptable change? I don't have to change. I just think it would be better.
scroll down to the elevation, Mr. Schneider, so it's easier to visualize what you're talking about. If you would scroll down to the front facade elevations.
Okay, yeah. Oops, gotta get back to that. So this staircase right here, again, not a great representation of it.
Pull this to the left, if you would.
Say again, please.
I can't see it all. Would you pull it to the left?
Pull it to the left.
Pull it to the south, I guess.
Yeah. Here, let me do this. Like that. Can you see it better?
Good, good.
All right, so the architect has this too far into the ground. This is gonna only be halfway. So if you take this window, it's gonna be sunk halfway into it. So it's probably a foot, 2 feet. He's representing a foot or 2 feet deep that it's gonna be. So this staircase becomes almost a full staircase in the front. And I have a patio. This dotted line is the patio for the lower unit. Right now, the engineering says this is going to be a footing. I don't have to put a footing, so I can move the buildings closer to Main Street as long as I don't have a footing there. Where it becomes an issue is this staircase right here. On each of these properties, the staircase is going to be about 7 to 8 treads in the air in the front. So that puts my foundation. I have to put a foundation for that staircase, which kind of messes up my setbacks because now I'm being forced to push the building back to the west. Do you understand that? Am I explaining it correctly?
Yes.
All right. So my issue is I would like to pull the buildings as closer to the 25 feet where this front facade, where this bay window is. I would like to get to that point as my 25-foot setback mark. So I would gain I'd gain about 10 feet, maybe 12 feet. Closer to Main Street.
So the stairs and the lower patios would be partially across the 25 feet then?
Correct, only the stairs.
That's the question.
And I would, again, the reason for the footing is that someone down the line could put something structure over it and be encroaching into the setback. Obviously, I'd put restrictions in the condo docs and could make it a condition that they're without city approval, that no enclosure of the porch are allowed at any point in time.
Vidya, Nick, is that permitted under the ordinance? Can a stair violate the setback?
As long as it's not covered, I would say yes.
Yeah, there are some permitted encroachments allowable by the ordinance. So outer staircases, I think, are permitted. I have to double check that particular section of the ordinance. As long as, like Nick says, it's unenclosed and uncovered, it can project into the required setback.
Okay, so thank you for the clarification, first of all. So our intent is to push this forward. So with the grade change too, just to get a good idea of what it is, it's showing a staircase here, and 4 steps in the back to go up to what I would call the first floor and the second floor unit. And then the garden level would be halfway under the ground. There is no staircase here. This is going to be 2 grade. By the time this is built, this is going to be 2 grade for all these. Once I get to the 3rd building, there might be a step or 2. There might be a step by the 4th building, and then I'm probably back to grade again on the final building. So these stairs will not exist. So from the back, the intent is that I have a straight walk through from the back right into the building where I have no more than 1 step. It's going to be 0 steps or 1 step is all. So to get into what I call the upper unit, which is 2 stories from the 1st floor and the 2nd floor.
Do you have a rendering or a section showing that, or can you fly a model and show us that?
Yeah, so for the next meeting, I will have that broken down where you actually can see what it is, because it's not, this isn't representative. So this is the back patio right here. So for most of the units, it's either going to be a step here or no step at all. This is going to be grade up here. And I'm going to take that grade and I have to drop it 10 feet from this point to the front, basically. Not 10 feet, 7 feet. Let's say 7 feet.
Do the upper units have patios too?
So the way it's designed is that this is what I call the upper unit. It's the first floor and the second floor. So this patio right here is for that floor, and they will also have a balcony space up here. Currently, we have this as a master. They might change, but this will be a balcony area for him, a deck area.
Will
The only deck, the only patio space in this whole space for the lower unit, which is smaller, obviously, is going to be the front. Is this front right up here?
Will that patio space penetrate the 25-foot line?
It will, but not much, a couple feet, but it's not going to be foundational. It's just going to be, it's going to retain approximately 3 feet of earth.
Again, Vidya, is that permitted?
I'm looking at a section of the ordinance that does allow projections for porches and even covered stairways into the required front yard, but it specifically references residential districts. I need to double check the ordinance because this is a residential use permitted in the O2 district, subject to the regulations of the RT district, which is a residential district. So I need to make a clarification whether I should consider this as a residential district because technically the use is a principal permitted use at this time, subject to the RT district, or if it is considered under the O2. So I'll have to look at the different sections of the ordinance and clarify that.
So you and Mr. Snyder can work that out before it comes
Absolutely.
for the planning commission.
Absolutely.
Vidya, I'm very proud of you. That was a mouthful that you said, but I actually understood exactly what you were saying. That was good. I'm impressed.
Mr. Snyder, can you show your railings on your next drawings for those upper units and their patios or the balconies up top?
I'm sorry, say that again, sir.
On the next submittal, can you please show the railing type, what it will look like, what it's constructed of, material-wise?
Yes.
On the next drawing set.
I will do so. We are now focusing on all the fine details of the materials to be used on the building. So yes,
Excellent.
I'll provide that all for you.
Thank you.
So the maximum permitted, Vidya, this is a question for you. This gable is, even though we're well within range, I got a foot to play with on the elevation of 35 feet max. This is probably, I'm guessing this is at least a 5-foot gable, if not more. Does this count, since this is a livable space up here, does that count as just because it's a false gable? So if I were to remove this, I actually could raise this building higher, I guess is my question. Not that I want to, but is that basically how you're reading the ordinance?
Yes. Whether it's a fake gable, a faux gable, or whether it's a real gable, the height of the building is always measured to the midpoint of a gable. And if it's a flat top building, it is measured to the top of the flat roof space.
Of this cornice right here, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I apologize. I didn't mean to digress. But it'll be, no matter what, it will be within the 35 feet or lower. And I'm trying to get it lower than 35 feet. That's too high, even with the false gable in front.
What height are the ceilings going to be inside the buildings?
9. So if the garden level is either going to be 9 or 10. I'm dealing with mechanical right now. So I want to maintain a finished height of a 9-foot ceiling in the garden unit. So that's what I'm tweaking right now with my HVAC people, trying to figure out how to get the HVAC material in there. So I might have to push the lower level to 10 feet. But the first floor of the second unit is 9 feet, and the third floor is 8 feet.
Okay.
So if I take, just quick estimate, if I take ground level at 5 feet plus a foot for the floor joists, that's 10, plus 9, that's 19, plus the floor joist, that's 20, plus 8 is 28. Plus because I have a pitch here, I'm going to be at, maybe 30, 31 feet. And that gives me, and then if I put this false gable up here, that's kind of where I'm getting close to 35 feet. But I can remove that, and will be well short of 35 feet if I decide to ultimately remove this gable in the middle. I'll be closer to 30.
I must say that I don't like the look of the false gable from the north.
Right, that's why we removed, so this one is showing the building number 1 to the north and building number 5. We're removing those. So this, he should have removed, the architect should have removed this. You shouldn't see this gable in the middle because of the span. The two buildings will hide that gable. That's why we removed it. We didn't like it either.
Right.
And if you don't like that one, we're not opposed to removing that one. My goal is specifically on the gable is I don't want a cookie cutter. I'm trying to add just a little bit of different character element to the plan, without, just so that they're different and it doesn't look, again, I'm trying to avoid a monolithic look on the plan.
Okay.
And then one last thing on the renderings. So we've decided that building 1, 3, and 5 is what we're going with. We're taking, and building number 4 is going to be the same as building number 2. So we're going to remove the round windows and we're going to make those two buildings the same. Just to kind of, so when you see this next time, that's what you're going to see. It's going to be cleaned up in that regard. All right, we talked about the 3-foot distance. So this 3-foot distance is a firewall. It does. So what we're going to do is I'll have it added to the landscape plan. We're going to, in the front, we're going to add some kind of detail, either lattice or fencing, and we're going to put additional plants right here. Trying to get something that has vertical appeal to it to kind of, hide that 3-foot distance between the buildings.
Vidya, I have a question for you.
Yes.
The plan we saw the last time had the buildings all adjoining. And there was some legal technicality that prohibited that. Could you re-explain that again?
I think the question was 2-family dwellings being permitted in the district, the O2 district, and what is the definition of a 2-family dwelling? I think that's what we went over before. And a question came up as at what point is it considered as separate buildings? I believe that is regulated and dictated by building code. So what is proposed at this time over here is considered as 2-family dwellings, separate buildings.
The only way to allow them to be adjoining then is to change the ordinance?
When you say adjoining, you mean attached to each other?
Last time when we saw the rendering, all of these buildings touched. They were a typical row house.
Were they,
There was
Mr.
no
Schneider?
separation.
Yeah, so to kind of clarify where we were last time, building number 1 and number 2 were together. I had a common firewall between them. And I had building 3, 4, and 5 together with common firewalls between them.
Yes.
Per the code, based off of reading of the code,
Right.
we could separate them to meet the code. But then it became well, what do we want to separate it with? And we wanted enough room for windows and things like that. And it make it look like, we didn't have a foot between it. We wanted to be able to serviceability to walk between the building. That's ultimately why we moved them.
Sorry, Dennis, I didn't understand your question previously, but yes, they did need to separate it because if the buildings were attached, it would become multiple family residential, which is not permitted in the O2 district.
This is okay. I think it'll sell well. I just like the other better. I mean, row houses are by definition touching, and it's purely a personal choice. I happen to like the other better, where it was 3 and 2.
Right.
But
when it connects to
that, I assume is a change in the ordinance. It would be a delay, and maybe it would not pass. Who knows?
Yeah,
I like the better too, Mr. McGee. So
in the O2 district, 2-family dwellings are permitted. Multiple family dwellings, which is what an attached row house would be, is not permitted. So you're right. If to allow the previous design proposed, we would have to change the whole zoning district and what it allows for, which I'm not sure how well received it will be because the underlying zoning district is after all O2, not multiple family.
So we'd have to rezone this to multiple family to get around that.
Yes, and that is not in keeping with the master plan recommendations.
Because this is office in the master plan.
Yes.
Okay, I thought I'd try one more time.
Thank you for your input. I do appreciate it.
Okay.
And then I've already addressed number 10, which basically I will clean up the front facades and all the details regarding materials and things like that. And I'll provide the cut sheets. Last item was I'll provide the cut sheets, and then no signage. We're not having any signage on site at all.
Jeff, are you listening?
I am.
Just for the heck of it, would you look at these ordinances and, I mean, we have to do it right away. I don't want to slow Mr. Snyder down anymore, but to see if there are any practical, reasonable solutions to get back to the 3 and 2.
Sure. Be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
So that's all I have right now. Does any questions that I can answer for anybody?
I have a question.
Sure.
So with the false gable and the cornice coming off the sides, I'm looking specifically at the one middle building and then the one next to it where you have the 3 foot. But how far off do those cornices come? And then it kind of makes me wonder, like, I don't know how far back that false gable goes, but you know, the rainwater coming off of it, are you going to have downspouts? Will the water pour off into the other building? They seem kind of close to me, so I was just curious, you know, are they overlapping? On one elevation they seem to be overlapping, and then on one other rendering here, the one that's on the screen, they don't seem to be overlapping. So I'm just kind of curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so yes, they'll have gutters and attached to the whatever retention that we're putting in here. The cornices will wrap all the way around per the elevations. That the cornice goes all the way around the building and through the back. So that cornice will always stay on any design that we're doing. This is the false gable. That's approximately 4 to 5 feet, and we can make that as deep as we want to. Again, we don't like the side elevations. The reason it's on there in the first place is just to add a character reference to it. We do not want, our intent is not to be seen from either the northern elevation side or the southern elevation side. So that's why we removed all the other ones from the site plan. That answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess do we? I guess this is a question for maybe Vidya. Do we generally like to see downspouts shown on the drawing so that we can get a sense? Because when you start talking about how tight these things are, I don't know, might be interesting to see.
So let me be clear on the downspouts, really. So the only downspouts that you'll see on the front will be this front facade right here in the middle. Everything else will because from the front to the back will be pitched. So it's a flat roof. So everything's going to go back to the back. So you'll have to look at the back elevation. There'll be a catch basin here, and it will come through to come down the side here on the 3 foot side of every building, basically is what. So this will be on the block side, you know, the firewall side. And all that rainwater will ultimately come down to here. The only place that we have to catch water, and we might not even bring a downspout here, we can bring that water down on top of the roof and get to the lower roof and down. So we don't want to show from Main Street downspouts, and you'll see gutters, but we're going to hide any downspouts that are there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just, and then the concern about the kind of overhanging cornices, because with only 3 feet, depending on how far those come out.
Yeah, I'll get distances on the cornices from building to building. You want to know from building to building. I got 3 feet, so are those cornices out 1.5 feet and they're going to touch? No, they're not going to touch.
Yeah, they wouldn't touch because of elevation anyway, but I was just curious.
Right, yeah. I'll get you distances on those for the next plan.
Thanks.
Oh, do you have any others? Sorry.
I'm good, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Okay. I just had a quick question for you. Where will the mechanicals, the AC units be going? Are they going to be on the rooftops or somehow on the sides of the building?
Yeah, the AC units are right up there on the rooftop. On this, see that? Those are the
Okay.
AC condensers right there.
And so
Most
will-
likely, and then there's mechanical rooms in each unit, so there'll be separate mechanicals. Right now, we're looking at radiant flooring heating for the garden level, and this would be standard forced air in the first and second floor unit.
Will those be visible then from the sides
No,
or just
because-
because the
No, because
elevation?
this is a parapet, so actually all those units will be hidden on the roof. You'll
Okay.
never see them. And there's the drawing right there. Basically, that cornice covers the height of the unit. That's the
Any
intent.
skylights in the upper units?
Possibly. I haven't got that far.
right.
Most likely, I'll have something in the master bedroom. If I put them in, it'll be in the master bedrooms, and those decisions will also be addressed on here if you want to see them for the next meeting.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, I do have one, Dennis. Sticking with the HVAC mechanical discussion of the rooftop units, how will they be maintained and accessed on the roof if issues occur? There's ship style ladders on the back facing west, or can you explain that?
Yes, that's a good question. I do not have an answer for you for that. It'll either be a hatch or again, I want to avoid any exterior ladders or something along here. It's going to have to be addressed within the condo association too, because if I put a hatch in to access it, it obviously has to be agreed upon by the owners, and they can't stop, the lower unit to have maintenance done on his or her condensing unit. So I'll either represent a hatch. Most likely, it's going to be a hatch. To be simple on it, it'll most likely just be a hatch to get to the roof. Does that answer your question?
Sure, but I'm not sure the solution is the best.
Do you have a suggestion? I'm willing to listen.
Yeah, I'm just here to ask the questions, but
I would say that the owner should probably have to hire a lift when it's time to change it.
Yeah. I mean, well, since it's a condo and it's 2 units, the condo association is going to be that the 2 owners are responsible for this entire building.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have access association with that. The only way to replace this is by a lift. The only way you're going to get those units up there is with a crane. But for general maintenance, free-on maintenance, stuff like that, you're going to change these out every 20 years. And that's.
But general maintenance, I mean, just ladders on a truck probably would get them up there.
That's correct too. My intent is not to put any physical ladders on the side of the building. I don't want access from random people.
That's a safety concern.
Understood. What about the decks? All the neighbors are hanging out on the decks. Are you going to have landscaping, arborvitaes or something, kind of creating a wall or screens so you can't see from one deck to the next if people are sitting on them, or are they all just wide open?
Correct. We will be doing that. It's not on these plans, but we're going to pick a side. So we're the way that this is laying out right now, it would be the south side of every unit. So we're going to have to put some landscaping in between each one of these decks for privacy from each unit. So yes, that will be added to the landscape plan.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I have just a few comments to offer the applicant.
Go ahead.
I like the idea of moving it forward to the setback to the limit that is allowable. I think that's a good move. The false roof, I think the concerns you have, I would have also, especially from the elevation. I think if you're going to continue with having that, something besides a 2-dimensional view would be helpful to understand if it's really sight lined out of view from the perspective of the 2 buildings north or south of it. So
Okay.
Street level view, not a 2-dimensional flat view, would be helpful to prove that. And then 3, you kind of mentioned the way the elevations are set up or not necessarily true to elevations on the site. And I think you said you're going to have that in your next site plan package.
Correct.
And I would say that would be necessary for us to fully understand what you described. I think I got it, but I'd like to see it.
Fair
The
enough.
Point to the elevations you mentioned, or Vidya mentioned, maybe you can describe each building north-south elevation to a specific drawing, so you don't leave anything to the imagination. You know, if it's the same thing for building 1, 3, and 5, you know, say that on your title block, so it's very clear. And the fourth thing, I think there was some discussion about previous renditions, 2 buildings, you know, 2-unit or 3-unit, and maybe some differences of preference based on what we're seeing of 5 buildings. I guess I would say, you know, on Main Street from the bridge past where you are, there's a lot of different styles represented, and they kind of blend themselves in. I generally see this as a new style. You know, it's not way off in left field, but it's new, let's say. And I think the reference to changing the arched windows to the flat windows kind of helps unify this. And I see it as a composite, not 5 individual elevations. And that's kind of the way I would look at it. I just wanted to point out, I think the style is a little different. And that's not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's just different in my opinion, but I'm viewing it as one building as an elevation, not 5 individual buildings. And I guess if I had to say I had a preference, I like the 2-unit, 3-unit combined better than the 5 individuals. But looks like it'll be a nice add to the city. So hopefully you move forward with this.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Kristen Hauser, is there a way in the next iteration of drawings to have it produced without that false gable in the center? Is there a way to, so we could look and see what it would look like if they were all flat roof versus that false gable in the center?
Yeah, I'm picking up on your comments in general, and my partner and I have talked about that gable. In the next rendering, that gable might be gone altogether.
Yeah.
Kind of the way we're looking at it. Again, trying to add character, but maybe we went too far.
Yeah, listen, I agree. The ones on the north and the south, you know, when you look at them at the side, it kind of just, I don't know, it looked just completely out of place. So I'm glad that you removed those. And I think if you're going to do those 2, you might as well get rid of the center one too. And just, I don't know if it necessarily is a bad thing to have it more uniform looking, all flat roof. I think it's candidly, from my perspective, a little bit out of place to have that center gable or that false gable right in the center. It kind of detracts a little bit. But again, I appreciate you taking notice of that. And, you know, in the next iteration, if that's gone, I'd just be curious to see what it looks like. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way myself right now. So don't be surprised if it's gone altogether.
You got it. Thank you.
Mr.
Any other
Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah.
Yes.
Based upon the feedback from the Planning Commission, it looks like many of the commissioners are desirous of actually seeing this at least give the appearance of an attached building, maybe 3, 2 or all. So I think some consideration to putting the 3-foot and the 5-foot separation distance, creating some kind of trellis or height of a green, a climbing vine creeper, something that would sort of fill up the gap. So at least from the Main Street facade, the buildings look continuous, at least at the base. Maybe that is something you could consider.
As developers, we're willing to consider it. I'd like to hear the feedback from the commission too.
Repeat again, Vidya, what you're looking for.
Dennis, you had mentioned, and Mr. Gasson had also mentioned that it looked more attractive to have 3 buildings and 2 buildings, right? I mean, to have it like joined together, which is not possible currently under zoning. So based upon the discussion that was going on, I thought maybe one of the ideas that could be explored was the gap between the buildings. If the area could have some tall evergreens or a trellis with a climbing vine or creeper to at least not create this tunnel effect when seen from Main Street. At least it will give sort of a seamless at street level.
Something to consider. I'll be curious to see what Mr. Craggett comes up with.
Yep.
Anything else? So our action tonight would be to consider putting this on agenda for site plan review in the future. Sienna, oh, by the way, did you say you had a public comment on this?
I do.
Well, go ahead with that.
This comment is from Mike Daly and his wife, Colleen Daly, and they live at 508 Quarter Street. They've lived there for over 30 years. They stated that please register our full support for the proposed residential development at 1205 North Main. We believe the city and the DDA need to fully support the development and expansion by existing property and business owners in our city before bringing direct competition to those taxpayers and business owners already contributing taxes and DDA fees, as well as customers, employees, services, et cetera, to our city for many years.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? All right, Sienna, what are we looking for? First meeting in September?
Yes, that would be for a public hearing.
Okay, why don't we find a motion here to place it on the first meeting in September for a public hearing?
So moved.
And is there support?
Second.
So it's been moved and supported. The roll call, please.
I'm sorry, was Commissioner Gossen?
No, Bavacqua.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Bavacqua,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Gossen,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
McGee.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder. I'll see you in a month.
Thank you very much for your time and your comments. I do appreciate it.
Okay. Next item, number 7, consideration of a site plan for the Riverfront Place Apartments located at Walnut and First Street. Vidya.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pull up the site plan, overall site plan first. Is everybody able to see the plan?
Yes.
One second. It's not showing up on my screen for some strange reason. Okay. Okay, thank you. At the city's request, we have reviewed a proposal for Mr. Rendazzo to construct a 5-story, 134-unit, multiple family apartment building and 5 3-unit, 4-story townhouse buildings. The site is located on the southwest corner of First and Diversion and is zoned RM2, which is multiple family residential. Since December 2017, the applicant has appeared before the Planning Commission numerous times, addressed concerns and received feedback each of the times. Also, many major changes took place which necessitated these revisions. This included acquisition of additional land, which resulted in the addition of more townhouses. So when the project got added to, each time the plan had to be revised. Multiple family dwellings are permitted as a special exception use in the RM2 district, which requires compliance with the ordinance for all setback requirements. Now, the applicant is seeking to deviate from the specific standards for setbacks from the RM2 district, as a result of which they are seeking special projects approval from the Planning Commission. The site is identified in the Master Land Use Plan as a PICA, which is a potential intensity change area, formerly referred to as a special projects area, and does qualify for such consideration by the PC. The site is noted in the current master plan as multiple family residential, 2 to 3 stories in the future land use plan. The site is subject to also evaluation under the Sustainable Rochester Evaluation Worksheet. Now, as I mentioned, the applicant has been before you multiple times and also had a public hearing on the project. I will discuss mainly the changes that have taken place since the Planning Commission last saw it, because it's a pretty expensive project. I don't want to keep repeating some of the details. In a cover letter that is dated July 8th, the applicant states that 5 units have been eliminated. So from 134, they should go down to 129. However, if you look at sheet C1A under density calculations, I'll scroll down on the sheet. The sheet is, I'm going to minimize it a little bit. So, okay. And if you look at the density calculations over here, I'll zoom in a little bit. One of the notes continues to state that there are 134 units. Now, when you look at parking for phases 1 and 2, when you calculate the total amount of parking spaces provided, it notes a total of 130 units. So the discrepancies must be corrected. It's either 134, 130, or 129. So the same data needs to be consistent on all sheets. Now, as the applicant previously stated, the site will be built in 3 phases. Phase 1 will be 1/2 of this building, which is shown with this separation line here. And okay, this is going to be phase 1. This portion of the building is going to be phase 2. And the townhouses will be built in conjunction with phases 1 or 2, depending upon the sales of the units, from what we had understood.
Vidya, I think you're sharing a different screen than the one that you're talking to.
I have the site plan sheet on my screen. Is that not what you're seeing?
Yeah, your cursor is not moving though.
Yeah, it's, for some reason, it's freezing. Can you? Okay, I'll leave it at the site plan sheet. Okay, since the applicant is proposing to build the building in phases and the construction of phase 2 of the building is dependent on phase 1 success, under the provision of special exception and special projects, the Planning Commission and City Council can seek a performance bond to ensure that the project is completed. With regard to setbacks, the required front, rear, and side yard setbacks for the RM2 district is 40 feet minimum each. Now, the proposed building is at 0 feet front yard setback. It has got 11.7 foot rear yard setback. It's got 0.7 feet west side yard setback and an east side yard setback of 1.7 feet. Now, the townhomes that are located on, that are shown on another sheet, I'll not go to that yet. They do comply with the required setbacks. They do, I'm sorry, they are located at a 15-foot front yard setback, 23.8-foot west side yard, and they do comply with the rear yard setback. With regard to vehicular and traffic circulation, that has been a significant point of discussion at this meeting. The applicant has had Cleese and Vanderbrink, one of their traffic engineers, do an extensive study which took into account all the recently approved developments, which were Cedar Brook, the Oak Brook, and Blossom Mills, and the traffic generated from each of one of those developments. And the findings of those study basically said that no improvements are required at this time. The applicant's letter dated July 8th also states that the traffic generated from the development is likely to be even less than previously anticipated due to the current pandemic and the change in work habits, resulting in less commute and more work from home. With regard to pedestrian access, a new 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk is shown along the site's Diversion Street frontage to Clinton River Trail. The existing sidewalk along First Street frontage is to be located within the right-of-way. A new 5-foot wide sidewalk is also shown on the south side of Riverfront Drive, where my cursor is pointing, so that it provides for a connection all the way from Diversion, going down the front of the townhouses and connecting to Campbell Street. Based on off-street parking, the site plan does provide for all of the required parking. A total of 254 spaces are required. A total of 265 spaces have been provided, including 7 barrier-free accessible spaces. These are distributed in the underground parking level, and also a couple of spaces are shown out here. And the configuration of the barrier-free spaces here is subject to review and approval by the building official. The plan also proposes 4 electric car parking spaces. If you look over here, there are 2 parking spaces shown in each one of those spaces to facilitate electric car charging. There is a drop-off area shown along the public right-of-way in front of the building. This white space, it is 9 feet by 75 feet. It will require approval by the city's DPW department. Now, the floor plan continues to show a leasing office, a coffee bar area, a mini banquet hall, and the building also has 2 recreation areas, the east and west terrace. we continue to ask clarification. Are these amenities open to the public or are they open only to the residents? And if they are open to the residents, are they open to the residents' guests also? Previously on sheet A101, the number of employees in each one of the phases was noted. That note is not there on this particular submission. So we do need to see just how many employees are going to be there in each shift, because we need to know how much of the parking spaces would possibly be taken up by employees. With regard to architecture, I am going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to share. I am stuck on this one second. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'm going to share the architectural elevations. Just a moment. Is everybody seeing the elevation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the applicant has changed the elevations a little bit. If you look previously, the center of the building had a peaked roof. The applicant has actually reduced the height over there and made it a flat roof in order to break up the mass of the building, in order to make it appear like they are two distinct buildings just connected in the middle, so that it doesn't appear like a huge building mass which was raised at the last meeting. Now, the site plan package also includes details for their two terraces, which are the east and west terrace, both of them with amenities. One has got spa, grass area, sitting area. Another one has got some kind of courts. Those plans for the terrace are labeled as concept plans and will be reviewed and finalized with final architecture. Now, that would not be acceptable because the two terrace areas are clearly visible when you're coming northbound on the bridge, since the site is at a much lower level than the bridge. So a final plan for how those two terrace areas will look must be presented with the site plan at this time. With regard to building height, the proposed building height to the midpoint of the peak was previously noted as 59 feet 3 inches on the north facade and 67 feet 10 inches along the south facade. Now, the revised plan notes the height to the midpoint on the north facade as 62 feet, even though their letter that is dated July 8th states that the building height has been reduced by 3 feet. So previously it was 59 feet. So if they reduced it by 3 feet, it should be 56, but it's actually labeled as 62. And that is based upon this tiny dimension over here that I looked at with the magnifying lens, but I would like the applicant's clarification on exactly what the height of the building is, because some of the notes are not matching what is there on the plan versus what is being stated. Now, the Planning Commission had asked for a height comparison of other buildings to get an idea of how this site will appear when viewed on an east-west or a north-south line. And the applicant did provide this line of sight diagram that shows you when all the way from University, when you're going down to the river, how the grade change, how the building Riverfront Place is going to look along with the townhouses when compared to the rest of the buildings that are further north from it all the way down the street. The master plan currently does recommend 2 to 3 stories, but that master plan was written in 2014. And since then, the Planning Commission, based on various discussions, had recognized that this site is at a much lower level than everything that abuts it. So putting a 2 to 3 foot tall building will actually be completely out of scale with anything around it. While we did not specify what the correct height would be, the discussion was that when the master plan is rewritten, we will revisit the building heights in this area. And I want to clarify that the city is in the process of bidding out and trying to find a consultant to redo their master plan, at which time this is going to be one of the areas that will be revisited. Proposed building materials and colors do need to be presented before the Planning Commission. Now, the elevations for the main apartment building is consistent with limestone, a little bit of ephes accents, and a lot of brick in traditional Rochester colors. Now, the townhouses, on the other hand, the applicant has presented, I'll share the screen for the townhouses. The elevations for the townhouses actually include, while the facades look attractive, it includes a whole lot of ephes. All this material is ephes. Previously, it was shown as stucco. Now, stucco is also a building material that is similar to ephes, but it's a lot more durable and it definitely looks better than ephes does. In long term, ephes is not considered as a durable material, and that is why in most ordinances it is limited to being used as an accent material only and not as a primary building material. So we recommend that the applicant switch this ephes back to stucco, which is more durable and would look better with the building when compared to the ephes that is being proposed on this elevation. With regard to landscaping, there is an extensive landscape plan submitted with multiple sheets. I'll just go to one of the main sheets that shows all of the landscaping on the plan. A lot of trees are being proposed, shrubs. There is a pocket park being created at the corner of First Street and Diversion along riverfront way drive. There are going to be trees planted. There is some amount of vegetation being planted to screen the new townhomes from the parcels and the apartment that is over there. There is a detention pond in the south here, south side of the townhouses, and there is some vegetation and trees proposed along that also to try to create some naturalized appearance along the Clinton River Trail. The landscaping around the pond, of course, is subject to review and approval by the city's engineer and DPW. The applicant has done a detailed tree survey and they have provided a list of trees. There are a total of 88 trees on the site. 55 are considered as exempt and 33 are regulated. Of the 33, only 3 are proposed for preservation. So replacement is being provided for a total of 30 trees based on the caliper count. The calipers that they're taking out, they're providing replacement for it. Now, that was the northern parcel, which is north of Riverfront Way. Now, the southern parcel, which has got most of these townhouses and the rest of the area with the detention pond, has got a total of 118 trees, of which 56 are exempt, 62 are regulated, 37 are to be preserved. Replacement is to be provided for a total of 25 trees based on caliper count. So the tree replacement counts are required above and beyond what is required for regular landscaping. So the site plan and the landscape plans have been clarified to make that distinction between the trees that are being preserved and the trees that are being taken out. There was some question about if any of the trees are landmark. Per the city's forester, the trees that were previously identified as landmark trees are in fact nuisance species and do not qualify as landmark trees requiring preservation. With regard to lighting, the applicant is proposing 6 different fixture styles, which include pole lights, wall-mounted fixtures, bollards, and more. Fixture details have been provided, a photometric plan has been provided, and it is acceptable at this time. With regard to trash, there is a centrally placed trash room in the building. In one of the previous meetings, the applicant had explained in detail how the internal trash room works. So there is going to be, the trash room is down here inside the building. So there is going to be no exterior dumpster units for the site. With regard to amenities, as I previously mentioned, there is an east rooftop terrace, west rooftop terrace. Both of them seem to have attractive amenities. However, they are labeled as conceptual and they do need to be finalized at this time. As regards to signage, there is only a sign proposed on the north facade of the building, Riverfront Place, and some signage on this facade. And that will be reviewed by the city administration for conformance to size prior to installation. Stormwater detention, there is a huge pond proposed on the south side of these townhomes, and it is intended to take the stormwater drainage from all of these parcels and is subject to review and approval by the DPW department and the city's engineer. Finally, with regard to the project being considered as a special project, the applicant is required to provide a written statement which specifies what is the public benefit of the project. Since the Planning Commission and the City Council are granting deviations from the ordinance standards, the applicant has to justify a public benefit from the project in order to justify being granted such deviations. The applicant had originally given a written statement in 2017, then updated it in 2019 based upon the change in scope of projects. The applicant explained that the deviations being requested is in context of existing developments in the surrounding area and identified it as a housing type that is much in need of the community. He also stated that they intend to contribute $75,000 towards the city's vision for the Clinton River landing area. And the plan also involves the redevelopment of a former brownfield, which is an industrially contaminated site. We have done extensive review of this project. If you would note that this is my site plan and special projects review number 7. In addition to this, I have also done an updated sustainability review for this project, and the updated sustainability score for this project is 16 out of 20 points, which classifies it as a sustainable project under the City of Rochester's Sustainability Evaluation Guide. This is a challenging site, which provides an opportunity for redevelopment of a former industrial use parcel into a use that takes advantage of its proximity to the Clinton River Trail and downtown. As I mentioned, this proposal has been reviewed a number of times, and the applicant has made numerous changes. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing earlier this year before the pandemic lockdown started. At the public hearing, the Planning Commission had expressed additional concerns based on public comment. The project is before you tonight at this time for receipt of the applicant's presentation and to make a recommendation to the City Council regarding consideration of this project. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Before we have the petitioner up, commissioners, do you have any questions for Vidya?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one note, not really a question. She mentioned a couple of building signs. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to mention there's also a monument sign that's suggested on the plan, but it references by separate permit. So maybe that's just a non-issue.
This is the one that would be used to indicate the location of the city facility, the landing.
I believe the sign the Commissioner Gasson is referring to. I will share my screen just 1 second. Monument ground sign over here, but this ground sign will not be advertising Riverfront Place because it is located within the public right of way. You cannot advertise a private entity within the public right of way. It's probably going to be more as an amenity sign in conjunction with the city and creation of this pocket park. The actual sign advertising Riverfront Place is going to be on the building facade over here, and I believe a secondary sign on the side over here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gasson.
This is Commissioner King.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mayor, do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I just have a question for you, Vidya. I reviewed the sustainability study, which I found very helpful, but I had a question regarding the system capacity. It was noted as that was the score of 0. So can you just clarify whether or not there is an issue with the capacity, or if this, just clarify what that means, I guess.
Yeah, the system capacity with regard in the sustainability study is, it's the load that is already on the system. You get a point for it if the proposed development is not increasing any existing load to the system already. It does not calculate whether the system is being overloaded. It basically says, is there going to be a change in the system's capacity based on the current use versus the proposed use? So far, I don't think any project has scored a point for that particular entity. I have the applicant's engineer and architect here. I think they'll be able to explain better how the REU and the system capacity works, or, Nick, if you want to pitch in, that would also be helpful.
Can you say that one more time, Vidya? I'm sorry.
On the sustainability evaluation, there is one indicator which says system capacity. So they have to have 0% change in the REU. So there is no proposed capacity improvement, and 84 new REUs are proposed. So they got a 0 point for that particular sustainability indicator. So Sarah would like an explanation for what exactly we mean by that. I'm struggling to find the right words to explain it properly.
I got you. So I'm sorry, Blaine, I just walked in here. We were checking on something. So REU, residential equivalent units. So if there would have been, there's never been anything on the property but a little building, right? So they put no pressure on our system whatsoever. So by adding the residential units, obviously you're taking capacity up in the sewer. That's exactly why we did I think when Blaine first got here, it's like 5 years ago, we did the interceptor under the river to add capacity for that district, Sarah. So we actually planned to have the city spend 1.2 million, I think, Mayor, out of our money to get rid of the siphon under the river to increase capacity within that district. So we could take up to, I believe it's 1,100 units total additional in that district. So obviously with 134, close to that, we're okay. So they will add to the capacity, but we planned for that.
Okay, and not much of that 1,100 has been used at this point?
Zero, actually.
Okay,
Bill.
thank you. I assumed we wouldn't get to this point if that was an issue, but
Agreed.
just want to be sure.
That's early on in our evaluation. Even the condos, the Royal Park condos, there was 14 units there, but they had equivalency because of the way the hotel was set up, that it was a net zero. So technically, because Mosheri didn't build and Overlook didn't build, we're at zero at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for video?
I got a couple questions, quick questions.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Vidya, when you look at the site plan, are you going to be able to, from the trail, are you going to be able to see the buildings, or is it going to be pretty much those trees and stuff going to cover that up? What's your opinion on that?
I believe the applicant is planning to plant mature trees, not the minimum 2.5-inch caliper trees at the beginning. So they are planning to plant a lot of mature trees along the Clinton River Trail. It's definitely not going to look as stark as some of the other developments we have had would look. It's not going to completely screen the building, but over a period of time, yes, once those trees have more growth, it is definitely going to soften. You'll still be able to see the top stories of the building, but not the kind of mass that you envision, because all the way to Riverfront Drive, Great Private Drive, it is going to be maintained as grass area, lawn area with trees planted. I believe, Mayor, at the last meeting, the applicant had a colored rendering showing what it's going to look like from the Clinton River Trail when the trees are initially planted and when the trees establish themselves further. So I hope they will clarify that when it's their turn to speak.
Okay, thank you. And then another question, I don't know if we did this, because I know you've had many of these plans. This is only my second one, I think. And this goes to most things is, do they have any kind of backup power situation? Because, as people know, power goes out on my street quite regularly. We've had power outages in town. Is there backup thing? Can the system handle it? I mean, I guess that's something we should always take a look at.
Mr. Melia, can you answer that for us? Mr. Melia?
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there is plans for a backup generator on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Anyone else for video?
Video, just looking at the Nowak and Frauss drawings, there's multiple notes about phase 2 and during phase 1 construction. To the west of the building, we'll have seeded grass area,
right,
which will be constructed for phase 2. Does the applicant have a phase 1 only rendering and drawing set we can see?
Yes.
We did.
They did submit a drawing set that showed only phase 1, and I will try and find that sheet for you.
It showed temporary features on the west wall of phase 1. I don't remember exactly what they were, but were in the balconies and windows?
Yeah, that was in the notes here.
Yes.
And those would go away when phase 2 is constructed.
Correct.
And I think all but 2 of the windows were for common areas. Only maybe 2 residential units were impacted with those features that would go away. The rest of it was all common office areas and stuff.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding Mr. Stone's question correctly, will the lawn area be planted that would be subsequently phase 2? And the answer is yes, or finished product for phase 1, and the street trees as well. So it'll be finished in phase 1, and then when phase 2 is built, that lawn area would be replaced by the building.
So in the unlikely event that the project stalled for 5 years, for whatever reason, it would look finished if it's stayed in that condition.
Yes, it would look finished architecturally, and it would look finished landscape-wise.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
I don't know where it will finish. It will be finished.
Is financing in place for phase 1 to occur?
Right now, it's planned on a cash basis.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Or are we asking the question of the applicant, or are we waiting for his?
Well, we're asking them video, but we deferred to Mr. Amelia for the answer. So,
So I mean, I just had the question, and again,
Mr. Amelia, why don't you go ahead and come up or rather take over from here and bring us up to speed on your project from, I believe the last time we saw you was 5 months ago, March 2nd at the public hearing.
That's correct. And thank you all this evening for hosting us again. As Vidya mentioned, we've been here since December 17th, so we're coming up on 3 years. We've enjoyed what we consider a collaborative effort with this planning commission and with Vidya and other staff members. We've learned each time comments, and at the last meeting, we seem to have a general consensus of a lot of the planning commission members, but there were some issues raised by some of the planning commission members and the public. Rather than go for a vote, we chose to make some additional modifications and submit. So I'd like to go through it briefly. We're aware that there are a couple new members tonight, and we're happy to answer any additional questions. Video, if I may, do you have our PowerPoint presentation that you can put up?
Siona, is there PowerPoint presentation on that jump drive?
That I'm not 100% sure of.
I don't.
Do you have your presentation? Because you can share the screen if you like.
You know how to do that, Mr. Amelia?
We do not have that. We had assumed that the city would have that presentation up.
I have only the PDF files. I do not have a PowerPoint in this jump drive, but I can pull up the site plan if you would like, and you can speak live.
Do you have? We submitted the PowerPoint, but that should be also in a PDF.
Oh,
if you can display that.
I'm trying to.
Anna, is the thumb drive in your desk?
Yeah, I don't think that was submitted. Vidya has a copy of everything that was on the
Yeah, I'm looking at
that. She only submitted the actual packet of like the presentation or the PowerPoint. I never had the PowerPoint.
Yep, there's no PowerPoint in this jump drive that I have from you. It's got all the specification sheets, site plans, traffic report, cover letter.
Thumb drive on your desk, Siona?
Blaine, what Vidya has the thumb drive, that's what she's looking at, and it's not on there. That's what
Yeah.
She only gave me the actual booklets of the presentation.
Let's go through if there's a PDF of the PowerPoint, let's use that.
There is no PDF of the PowerPoint either, Blaine. There is only the individual site plan review sheets.
Mr. Amelia, can you quickly send that again to one of these people?
Does Amy have?
Amy, she's currently reviewing it to see if she can pull it up. If not, she will send it to Fiona and to Vidya to pull up. We appreciate your cooperation because it's an important illustration. We've spent significant time to provide elevations and renderings to illustrate some of the points. So if you can bear with us for a moment.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question while we're waiting?
Please do.
It was just sent to both people.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mayor.
we talked about, or Vidya talked about that under the provisions of the special exception, the planning commission may seek to obtain a performance bond. Is that something that I don't know if if we talked about, would you be willing to do that?
I think we'll certainly look into it. While we're originally planning on doing the phase one in cash, it's an added cost, but to the extent that financing is ultimately used, we'd provide either whatever bonding was required of other projects this size or whatever bonding is required by the financing arm. So,
because you know, who knows what the economy is going to do in the next few years. I mean, everything could be great, everything could be terrible. And, you know, I was around when in 08 and 09 when things weren't so good and, you know, there were some issues. So I would like to see a bond if we could.
well, that's certainly something that we can look at.
Okay. Is that a, what does that mean exactly?
They'll get back to us.
Okay, thank you.
Fiona, would you like me to share? I have it open already.
Mr. Mayor, we have the ability to make that a condition if this is to move forward, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is everyone able to see the,
Yes.
okay, go ahead, Mr. Melian.
Who provided this? Was this Amy who did this?
Yes, she emailed it to me and I just downloaded and opened it up.
Amy, wherever you are, thank you very much.
Right. And we'll give Siona some credit too, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. And Vidya, if I can ask, if I can prompt you when necessary to go to the next slide, and I appreciate that. So
Absolutely.
This is a revision to the front elevation, and you can see significant effort has been made to reduce the massing on it. So the property has been recessed, the roof line has been lowered. The roof line has been lowered overall, and the roof line in the center has actually been eliminated. We've got comparative notes that we'll show you in subsequent slides, but you can see how attractive the elevation is coming out. The next slide, please. Some of the things that we're going to talk about since the last meeting, the front entrance has been reduced in terms of elevation. We've got revisions to show you. The building height has been reduced, and we've got a comparative slide. The terraces have been revised to minimize some of the views from Rochester Road. Based on Mr. Lord's comments, we've revised the parking circulation. Traffic study we will touch on. And what I think is very important is that the consistency with the sustainability Rochester. We're proud to have worked with you and have sustained a score of 16 out of 20. And a lot of the other points are simply not even able to be achieved. So we think we've gotten one of the highest scores you can for a site like this. Next slide, please. Again, some of the issues that we'll talk about on the specific elevations. So next slide. This is the site plan which Vidya touched on. The first building would be built in, the major apartment building would be built in 2 phases. As Mr. Stone indicated, the first building would be finished, the landscaping would be finished, and the townhomes would be built during that phase as well. The landscaping and the common areas would be finished as well. Yeah. Okay. This is important. On the left is the before slide. On the right is the current proposed. Significant reduction in the massing overall. There's a reduced height on the building overall, reduced height in the center area. We removed the roof in the center area, so you've got 90 feet of opening between phases of buildings at this point. There's relief. The main entrance of the building is set back several feet from the curb, so there's been a tremendous amount of relief to the building, and that seemed to be kind of the common theme of the last thing is how can we tweak this and reduce some of the massing. We think that we have successfully done that and quite frankly have a better designed product because of it. Next slide, please. Here is the overall comparison between the 2 buildings. The previous plan is on the top, the current proposed plan is on the bottom. And you can see it right away in the center how the significant reduction shows to reduce the massing. So there's 3 feet at the roof line has been eliminated. There's a 22-foot reduction at the entrance. The entire front has been recessed. There's a reduction in the number of floors in the center area. And visually, we've created 2 separate buildings with a 90-foot opening, and there's a space between the roof line. And Vidya, if you can go to the next slide, it'll show it in a pictorial. This is a comparison with the current proposed building superimposed over the previous, which highlights the difference. Again, the entire roof line is lowered, 90 feet separation, a 22-foot reduction from the previous roof line to the current roof line, and also a 30-foot reduction. And as you can notice that it's been set back as well. Next slide, please. This represents the overall and aerial view of it. If you look at the bottom of the slide, you'll see the red line, which was the previous footprint of the building. The building has been simplified, so there's less out portions of the building. It's a much cleaner look, and this was done for parking reasons, which we'll show you on the next slide. But it's a simplified footprint, which helps create more green space. And then you've got recessed entries as well. The terrace revisions we touched on. We've moved the pool from phase 1 to phase 2, which has a cleaner look. And although the view of the property from Rochester Road is substantially screened, the moving of the pool farther to the west makes it even further removed from the sight lines. This is one of the biggest changes. This was a comment based on that Mr. Lord had made. Previous parking required was 262 units, and we had provided 267. But the biggest change was the maneuverability. It created although every space worked and all the drives worked and met code, they weren't as convenient as what you'll see on the current plan. More difficult maneuverability. It didn't have turnaround, had some tight corners, and had numerous points of entry. The next slide depicts our current plan and a much more fluid design. Next slide, please. Here's the current plan, which shows just 2 points of entry, and then it shows turnarounds or round areas within each plan. Because we've reduced the number of units from 134 to 129, the amount of parking required is actually less, but we still now have abundant parking, putting over 265 spots when 254 are required, and that's including employee parking. It's been redesigned for proper circulation. We've eliminated the dead ends in the drives and reduced the number of garage entry points. So we learned from the last meeting. It was a good comment, a good suggestion, and the plan has been approved as a result. The traffic study, and Julie Kroll, our traffic consultant, our traffic expert, is here as well and can address any questions. But the traffic study, which was accepted at the last meeting, indicated that there would be not significant change in traffic volume. There would be less than 5%. Based on the number of units, we've decreased it. We didn't update the traffic study, but the traffic counts would obviously go down as a result of the less number of units, lesser number of residents. Ms. Kroll identified a number of details that the city could impose now, working with your DPW, that could be imposed right away, whether this building were built or not. We think that those should be implemented, such as signalization, such as some additional signage. But what's very important to note is the pandemic has changed our society. And we think that it has not only changed it in the short term, but there are a lot of long-term implications that work from home is caught on. And although some people will return to work, there'll be a certain portion of people that will not return to work and will work from home. And we think that this product type, not only will we have less parking, or excuse me, less traffic, we think this product type is becoming more important because it's bringing a lot more residents to the downtown area that'll support the merchants there. So the pandemic, although it caused us all a delay, has allowed us to modify some things to make this product even more attractive in the current and what we perceive as a future environment. Next slide, please. As indicated, we've been working at this for close to 3 years with you folks, and we originally started out at the April 2018 meeting. It's scored 8 points based on all the recommendations, changes, and improvements. It's now up to 16 points as it was last March. So we're very pleased that we not only have a product that we think that meets the needs of the community, that meets the architectural requirements of the community, but has been deemed on an objective basis to meet all the sustainability requirements and qualify as a special project. So again, we've listened and we've appreciated your feedback. We're pleased to answer any questions that you may have. Our entire team is online tonight, including Mr. Randazzo's here, our architect, our engineer, and our traffic consultant are all online to answer any questions that you may have.
Yana, at this point, I know you have a questioner online, and then you have a couple of comments. Why don't you go ahead and handle that?
Yes. I will get to the first person. I'm sorry, I don't have a name for them, but they can speak now. Hello.
Good evening.
Yes, hi. Thomas McDonald, 633 First Street. I've been a resident just for a year and a half on First Street, and I am not in favor of this proposal. Since moving in, I've been astonished with the amount of traffic on First Street already, and this proposal is not going to help the situation at all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for calling in. I think you're the first time we've had a caller actually use that line. Appreciate it very much. Donna, you have a couple of written comments sent in?
I do. This comment is from Mike and Colleen Daly. They live at 508 Quarter Street. They reviewed the plans and they understand it's to be located on the south side of Rochester and northern section of Rochester Hills. We believe this development is unnecessary and unwanted competition to all the existing apartments, townhomes, and private residencies currently available for rent. While we understand and appreciate the collaboration efforts involving the two cities, we are against this development. We do not expect Riverfront Place Apartments nor its owners to be concerned about the ratios of vacant rental capacity, increase in traffic and congestion, safety of our neighbors, children, cost to the city of Rochester, and ultimately, we as taxpayers, we do expect our city leaders to have the same concerns we have on behalf of all residents, concerns now and into the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Is that all the comments you have from the public?
That is it.
Okay. Okay, commissioners, at this point, Mr. Milius still has the floor, and feel free to ask him any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions. This is Commissioner Gasson.
Please, sir.
I appreciate the revisions that have been made and the response by listening to comments in the past. So I wanted to state that. I think the building improvements aesthetically are wonderful. I think it hit the mark on what we were hoping you would try to do in terms of massing particularly, and that's what that comment was regarding. A couple of simple comments. I think the site plan shows sidewalks, and I'm questioning the placement of the sidewalk that circles around to the south side as being on the opposite side of the development. So you'd have to cross the street to get to it. And I'm wondering if two sidewalks, one on both sides of that aisle, would be something you'd consider. It definitely makes sense to me for the townhomes on the north side of that drive, that kind of cuts back or around to the west side of the development. Just a thought. There was a note on the landscape plan in the detention area is gravel material, and I'm not really sure of the extent of that. And I'm wondering why it is and how you would place that. It's on sheet L4, just for reference. A couple of thoughts on the pocket park. It wasn't indicated that that was part of the special project components, but I assume that it is. And I thought maybe if you were going to really create that, maybe more benches would be something to consider. Also, there's 2 shown now. And maybe in addressing it, and when you get to the next level of detail, the trash receptacles maybe wouldn't be right next to the benches. And I think maybe just apart from a smell or mess area kind of thing. I like that you have the profiles and adjacencies of adjacent properties showing the silhouette of the mass. But I think maybe an aerial view, and I think I've seen that in a previous presentation from you, more like what you would see, how this presents itself on the bridge as you're coming into town in reference to the other buildings there. My estimation when I look at the building mass, and I know it's been modified and refined, but it's roughly 3 times the size at full development, not including the townhouses, as the First Street lofts. So it gives us some reference of what the impact visually that could be as a mass. And I'll just say that seems big, but maybe that additional graphic showing something more aerial-like as a comparison to the other buildings around it to supplement the 2D drawings that you've provided would be helpful. I didn't quite get the garden or terraces in terms of how they were positioned. Is that a parapet on the roof where those are? Or how does that in cross section relate to the edge of the buildings? And maybe it's in the documents as I kind of went through them. I didn't see that. It'd be helpful to know that. Maybe that aerial view would help in that regard. And just in comment in general, maybe not to the applicant, but to the planner and the city administration. Previously, on at least 2 occasions when we've looked at this, I've questioned apartments as a use type and referenced previous reports that were provided to the commission about percentages and how Rochester fits into surrounding communities in that regard, and whether we are at a point of saturation, and is the demand for that really there? And that demand is one thing. I think maybe what is the impact of apartment living in this percentage, whatever the percentage is? And I'm hoping, as we've heard in the past, there's been some percentage presented as far as what Rochester now has. I'd like to hear that again. And if that's something we don't maybe have available for the next presentation, I'm fine with just referencing previous planning commission meetings where it was presented, and I could kind of go back and look at that because I just want to be informed. But I think it's important when we're talking about 100+ units being added, the applicant addresses it as a need in the area. And I'd like to hear that substantiated. I get the idea, and I'm all for residents downtown, but I'm really concerned about the amount of apartments in the city as a whole and the impact that it has. I'd like to hear about that a little bit more. But all in all, I appreciate where we are now as compared to where we have been in the past. And I guess if there's only one big concern for me, is it the size, and I guess 2 concerns, understanding apartments in the city of Rochester and the amount that they're at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Milia, can you respond to those things?
Sure. I think Mr. Gasson raised all good points. as it relates to some of the landscape issues. First of all, I think it's important when you look at the massing to understand that we've got 3 open acres on the site. So it's actually a very low density site for, you know, an urban apartment. So we're pleased with the amount of common area and open space, and we put a lot of it into landscaping. Some of the specific questions regarding the pocket park or the sidewalks, our landscape architect will certainly look at that, and we can incorporate that into, you know, final plans and engineering if we're doing that. We do have somebody on the line from CoStar, who's one of the national leading demographic consultants that can address the issue raised at apartments. But we've also provided in many of the previous meetings both the McKenna study, which outlined the need for over 450 apartment units in the area, as well as we provided a formal study from Integra Real Estate for the number of apartment units. So this isn't just our own opinion. This has been documented, empirical evidence about the need for apartments within the market. Our own evidence, you know, based on our own portfolios are in the high 90% leased. The changes going on in the market are supporting that. We're phones kind of ringing off the hook for people moving out of many other areas into places like Rochester and Royal Oak, and they're looking for these type of environments. So both the anecdotal and the tangible empirical evidence support the need for apartments in this community. Additionally, the apartments within the walkable area are going to support the merchants, and we think that the merchants will need walkability more so than ever to support it. In the last 3 months alone, there have been 35 national retailers that have gone through bankruptcy, and we think it's now more important than ever that there's going to be a lot of competition for the consumer dollar, and we'd like the resident merchants to get that, and the need to bring apartments to the community is more important. So the issues that Mr. Gasson raised as it relates to the landscape, we'll certainly can incorporate those into the final landscape plans.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Christian.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Malia, I am new to the Planning Commission, but that doesn't mean that I've not followed this fairly closely prior to becoming a commissioner. And I've got some questions, and I apologize if these have been addressed earlier on in your previous visits, but it would certainly give me just a little bit of some foundation as I look at this project. What is the time that you anticipate for construction, presuming this goes forward, start to finish for phase 1?
Phase 1 is you know, once the construction starts, is a 14 to 18 month process. Then we would do the lease up on that, and based on a successful lease up, would start construction of phase 2 after that.
Okay. And I apologize, I believe there was a question about some of the facilities, whether they would be open to the public or not, or whether it would be exclusively for residents and their guests. Is there any area on this development that someone who is not a resident or someone who is not a guest of a resident would be allowed to use?
It's generally designed for the use by the residents, such as the common areas and everything, in the pool area. Those are for use by the residents. If some of the frontage, if we had a small coffee shop for the use by the residents and some outside consumers wanted to use it, they wouldn't be precluded from using it, but it wouldn't be marketed towards that. It's generally for the use of the residents, and we rely on the balance of the merchants in the area to support the needs of the other consumers.
Thank you.
We'd have security keys as well, so you wouldn't have a lot of transient use of this property.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't know the protocol, frankly, as to how this issue would be addressed, but it had been mentioned about a possible development agreement or some type of document that's entered into between the developer and the city to make certain that certain things are done in a timely manner consistent with what's being articulated here today, in the sense that, if we're going to say 14 to 18 months, which is fine, what happens if we're at month 24 and the job's only halfway through? Or what happens in 6 years if phase 2 never takes place? Is there something that we can condition this development on as that has some type of teeth? We had talked about a bond earlier, but something to
Jeff,
just
are
make
you
sure that.
still with us, Jeff?
Yep, I'm still here.
I don't know if you can address that to Christian. The question is our authority and ability to require performance bonds for this project.
Yeah, you do have the ability, especially since it's a special project, to require performance bonds for sure. And then as far as the phasing, there was a lot of discussion early on in this project about, should this be considered, the first phase, should that be considered its own project, and then seek site plan amendment, for phase 2 when that's ready to go. And I don't really see an issue with going either route. The problem that Planning Commission will have and the city will have is the scenario that Christian just suggested, which is if we're at 4 years and phase 2 isn't done, you need to be able to say, okay, is that that could be a violation of an approved site plan. If you have certain timing requirements that are in there, certain commitments by the developer. So there are things you can put in there about, if they're say, at 24 months, they have, if they're not, they have to come back to Planning Commission to update and to either proceed or not proceed. I mean, you could be a little bit more creative, but certainly the performance bond. And the problem with the performance bond at this point is really, it's, if you have a performance bond, it's not necessarily you're going to finish the project for them if they do it. I mean, you're essentially getting it to the point where it could stand on its own, right? Where it's, they finish, landscaping, or they finish they board up, not board up the windows, but they make it complete, or to be honest, to demolish, and to raise the, whatever, say they started 10% of this building and they stop. Well, your performance bond is essentially, you might want to consider using that for raising of what they've done and reestablishing if the developer walks away. And I would have a hard time.
We can negotiate or require certain conditions in this performance bond.
Well, it wouldn't be a condition of a performance bond necessarily, but a condition of your approval. And the performance bond could trigger at whatever point you're discussing.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Say 4 months and a percentage, and if they can't perform, then we would file to collect from the bond. Is that how this would work?
Yeah, well, that's the tough way to do it. How do you actually collect on it? And the terms of the performance bond will be in the bond itself. And so really, if you want to talk about more of a trigger,
Yes.
if it gets to where it's a disputed situation where they dispute that they've stopped, or there's issues. I mean, there's usually a negotiation that occurs, or you call them back in for show cause, essentially a show cause hearing in front of Planning Commission as to why the project hasn't proceeded as required. I mean, there are provisions in the code for failing to comply with approved site plan, which is where I think that would be the safest way to go, and which would then take a circuit court. You'd want to go to a circuit court to as a violation on that.
Christian, does that help?
Yeah, it does, and I think it, the bonding issue is secondary to more of having some type of milestone, and in the sense of, hey, by X date, this has to be done, or if you're not halfway done at month X, then we'll have an opportunity to cure, I think is what Jeff had said. Come on in. What's the holdup? How come you guys aren't, progressing the way that you had anticipated? If the delay is excusable, that's one thing, but if it's just dilatory, that's another. But just personally, I would like to see something that has a little bit of substance behind it, just to make certain that the developer, and I have every reason to believe this is not going to be an issue, but in the off chance that something doesn't go right, the city isn't sitting there looking at a half-built building for 7 years and nothing's going on. I think there's got to be a balance there somewhere. And I think a development agreement could probably articulate those issues fairly to both sides.
Agreed.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Millian?
Mr. McGee, I'm prepared to answer Mr. Hauser's question now if you'd like, or we can wait till more questions are asked.
Go
I
ahead.
have a comment.
Mr. Millian, go ahead.
Thank you. I think Mr. Hauser raised a good question. And it's actually two separate points. One is a performance bond to build the building, and we can certainly work with you and would work with your attorney during the development agreement discussions. That's typically assuming we would receive approval here. We'd work on the development agreement, and ultimately the whole development agreement gets submitted to your city council for approval. But as it relates to the phase two, and those questions were raised all along in the process, and what we had agreed to, and the appropriate solution to this was phase one is going to be a finished building. The side of the building is going to be finished. All the landscaping in the subsequent phases is going to be finished. So if for some reason the building were not built, you have a finished project. You don't have an abandoned project. It's not like a subdivision of phase two didn't get approved, or you have a half-built retail building. This would be a finished building, and the second phase would be finished. If market conditions, we have a slowdown, if we have another pandemic in 3 years and there's a slowdown, there's no reason to go or force somebody to build a subsequent phase if there's not a market for it. But this board, this commission appropriately raised this issue early on and came up with the idea that let's have a finished building and let's have finished landscaping, and that's what we've incorporated. So it's a good point and one that's been accounted for in the design. We're putting in all underground utilities, and we have the economics in place to do that. So this would be a finished product. Phase two would, we would want to build it as fast as anybody would want to build it, including the city.
Sienna, you have a couple of people on hold. Vidya, what do you have real quick?
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Amelia's statement. If the site plan is approved with phase one and phase two shown in, and for some reason phase two does not materialize, the applicant will have to come back before Planning Commission to get amended site plan approval. Just because phase one is a standalone building, we cannot assume that a part of the site plan will never be executed. And that is where the development agreement will be very important, because right now, phase one is being built. The area for phase two is going to be maintained as clean lawn area. If that is not going to be built, the Planning Commission may actually require a better landscape plan to create that as an active recreational amenity. Maybe that would be designed as a park rather than just left as a lawn area. So even though phase one is going to be complete and standalone, should phase two not materialize, the development agreement should clearly require that the applicant reappears before you for an amended site plan approval. And maybe 10 years down the road, if they should choose to reinitiate phase two, they will have to come back before you for the necessary approvals at this time. Approvals cannot be open-ended, saying if the economy goes bad, we will build phase two after 10, 12 years. That's not how it will work. All plans have a finite life. If phase two is not built within a set time period, they will have to come back for amended site plan approval to eliminate that portion of the site plan. And if and when they are ready to build it, they will reappear before you for approval of that portion of the plan.
Thank you for that clarification. Sienna has a couple of more people who have called in. So Sienna, why don't you go ahead and put them on?
Yep. Hello.
Hi. This is Brian Cunningham. I live at 625 First Street.
Okay. Say your name again. I might have interrupted you.
I'm sorry. This is Brian Cunningham. I live at 625 First Street.
Okay. Thank you.
The question, the concern I've got is with Harding and Castell being a cut through from Livernois. I guess I'd like to see a copy of the traffic study, because I know when other construction projects have gone on, we have a tremendous amount of traffic coming through from Livernois. And my concern is, the construction vehicles, are they going to be limited to only coming in through diversion and that way, or are they going to be allowed to come down First Street? Plus, with all the additional people living at the end of First Street there, I can't believe that you would have a reduction in traffic over what we've got today. Not to name names, but there's a towing company downtown whose trucks just go, all kinds of speeds down First Street. And I mean, it is dangerous. And so you're going to be adding 100 and some, units down there with, single or, multiple families. And our traffic, cutting through from Livernois is going to go up substantially. I mean, I've had to wait, sometimes when the school was in, 10 minutes to back out of my driveway. And that's on First Street. So I have a hard time believing your traffic study that the traffic would actually be reduced. I just don't buy that. And so I think it is, talking to my neighbors and such, we're all very concerned about the influx of an increase of traffic, and that really needs to be addressed. Whether you put a stop sign at Wilcox and First, right there at the top of the hill, but I mean, cars just fly down First Street.
Thank you very much for calling in, sir. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Deanna?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Who are we speaking with?
Hi. This is Amy Humphreys. I'm at 609 First Street. I'm actually a neighbor of the person who just spoke, and I concur with everything he said. Traffic on First Street is already dangerous. And with 129 more units, with possibly twice as many people down at the end of the street, it will become untenable. I'm not certain how the traffic study was designed, but it certainly didn't take into consideration the traffic between Catalpa and Walnut. The traffic there is terrible all the time. I also have some concern. I saw one presentation that you had, and that was that there was to be no parking on First Street. Currently, west of Wilcox, we do have parking outside of First Street. And I'm wondering if that is being eliminated as part of the project. Can anyone answer that?
There's no intention to eliminate parking other than in front of this facility. The parking on First Street to the west would very unlikely be eliminated.
I see. Probability of at least doing another traffic study that would study the traffic west of Walnut. It appears that traffic has been studied going north on Walnut and traffic going onto Mill Street and onto Diversion. That was discussed at the last meeting at length. But there has been no consideration as to what the traffic situation would be west of Walnut.
Mr.
And
Amelia,
if you heard
I don't know if Ms. Kroll is with you tonight, but can she try to address this?
Sure, she is with us. Let me just address it on a general basis, and then I'll turn it over to Julie Crow, who's our traffic expert. We have provided a very significant and detailed traffic study, which at the request of the Planning Commission and your consultants included all the what's called background information, which takes into account not only the existing development, our development, and any future planned developments. So it did take into account that background information. We didn't indicate that the traffic by this development would actually be reduced. What we indicated that the increase would be less than 5%. What I did indicate is this plan versus the previous plan would be actually lower than the previous plan due to the number of evidence. So I'll turn it over to Julie, who can answer any specific questions you might have.
Okay. Yes.
Julie?
Yes, good evening. if it's okay, I just wanted to share my screen real quick. The traffic study was included in
I actually don't have a screen, ma'am. I don't have a screen in front of me because I it back.
But
I'm
if you
just on my
could,
phone.
Julie, the rest of us can see it and,
Okay. Okay.
The traffic study was included in the Planning Commission packet. So that's what I am going to share. That's available for download. So on in table 3, you can see that the trip generation for the site this is slightly higher because we're looking at the 134 units. But it gives you an idea. We're just talking about 800 trips a day. So that's 400 in and 400 out. When we're looking at peak hour operations, we're talking about 50 vehicles in the morning and 70 vehicles in the afternoon. And this is based on traditional peak hour operations. This is like pre-COVID. And then when we take those traffic volumes, we then distribute it into the roadway network based on the adjacent street traffic. And in this case, the majority of traffic we anticipate to be using Rochester Road. So in the morning, it was 70% of the traffic going to from Rochester Road, with the remaining traffic using the adjacent streets. In the afternoon, we looked at, it was about 60% with the rest of the traffic distributed amongst the other roadways accordingly. So what we're looking at for First Street, where we distributed the traffic to the west, it was about 8% in the morning and 12% in the afternoon. So if you apply those percentages to the AM and PM peak hour traffic volumes, that's where we drill down to what is the impact on First Street. And when you apply 8% in the morning to 50, you're getting less than 5 vehicles. And then in the afternoon, you're getting less than 7 vehicles impact on First Street. That's not to say that we did not understand that there are some ongoing issues on First Street. But as far as the traffic impact for this site to First Street traffic, it was not as much traffic sent to First Street as we anticipate to be utilizing the intersection at diversion.
Okay, so there will need to be 7 more cars on First Street in the afternoon, even if there were 200 people living in this facility?
So the trip generation for this site is based on the ITE trip generation manual, the 10th edition, which is what the standard practice is for determining trips generated by development. So even though there's 129 units, it doesn't necessarily equate into how the traffic is determined for a site. So we have to use the data that's published in these manuals when we're calculating the number of trips. So the number of trips for this site is about 50 trips in the morning with 14 in and 40 out. And in the afternoon, it was 70 trips with about 40 trips in and 30 trips out for this site pre-COVID.
I see.
And then again, those numbers are distributed based on adjacent street traffic volume, which in this case, we had quite a few routes for vehicles to take to distribute through the network. So that's how it ends up being that we're only seeing a small amount of traffic generated by this site utilizing First Street because they have so much site access.
So do you think that if you actually studied the traffic coming in from Livernois, which is the next main street coming on the west that runs parallel with Main Street, you might have a different picture? And I'll tell you why, because that's how people get out to M59. That's how people get out to Auburn Hills. That's where people get out to where they work. So, and this is my experience, and I defer to the fact that you're a professional. I just think that the study may have been too narrow and not taken into consideration that people use First Street already as a thoroughfare to get out to Livernois. Okay, not just First Street, but anybody working west of that apartment complex is going to zoom right up First Street. And right now there are no stop streets between Walnut and all the way up to Helen, I believe. Someone might correct me there. But for almost a mile, there are no stop streets and there's no one stopping them. And we already have a very high volume of traffic there. So I would ask you if we could have another study that would take into account the effect of traffic coming in from Livernois and went out to Livernois, down First Street, then Catalpa to Harding. I think that would be illuminating. I think with all due respect, your study has been quite narrow.
Julie, I believe you've counted that traffic in your survey before you did your calculation.
That is correct. So that's how when we determine the distributions, and I'll share that screen again for you. But that's when we calculate the distributions that you see here in table 4, that does include the traffic volume on First Street. So basically we take all the volumes coming into the network and out of the network from all different points of access. So it did include the traffic volumes on First Street as part of determining the distribution of traffic for this site.
Yes, because there are intersecting streets that aren't going to get much traffic if we're looking at the same map. And again, I know everybody else is looking at that right now, but I don't want feedback while I make my comments. But there are several streets just east of, or just west of the proposed complex. There's a street at Wilcox, okay? But nobody would go down Wilcox. People use First as a thoroughfare. So the fact that there's an intersection at Wilcox doesn't mean that many people are going to be Peach, and no one's going to be tuned down Peach to get to work in the morning. Okay, they're going to be using out, and that's First Street, and then making a left on Catalpa, and 45.
You're breaking up. Maybe you can move around with your phone.
Yeah, that's fine. But what I'm saying is there are a number of intersecting streets, but nobody uses them. I mean, there's no reason for a large number of people to use them. They're using First and then going down to Catalpa and going out to Livernois. And nobody is going to use Peach, or no one's going to use Wilcox, because there are only a few houses on each one of those streets. First Street is bearing the brunt of all of this. The fact they're intersecting streets doesn't make a difference. It shouldn't make a difference because no one is using them, or a very small percentage of people are using them. People are using First. And it's like living on M59. And frankly, our property values, we're paying property taxes, we're long-term residents. I have 7 people on my block. And 5 of those houses have, including mine, have been extensively renovated or in the process of being renovated. And we have done everything we can to beautify our neighborhood and keep our property values high. And what you're doing is you're really using our streets like M59. I feel like this is being done with a wink, with very little consideration to the long-term residents.
Mr. Chair.
The caller, do you have anything else for us?
I think that's it.
Thank you very much for calling. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Mr. Bavacqua.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a question for Julie. If you could go back to that slide again, or that portion of the study you were showing. So I guess a question I have is, how do you come to the determination of 71% AM traffic going to Rochester Road? Is that just purely based on its proximity and the fact that it's a main artery, and that there's some calculation that therefore that many people will choose that? Because as the caller stated, if you're anywhere west, heading anywhere west of the development, you wouldn't go up to Rochester Road. And I guess you're going to make assumptions that even if you assumed 50% of the traffic there was going west versus going east or directly south, you're going to have at least, you talk about 50 something people leaving the facility, at least 25 of them are going to go west. I mean, I guess I don't understand how you come to 71 jumping up onto Rochester, especially with a no right turn or a short light at Rochester Road and First Street, and a very short light at Diversion and Rochester. I just don't see it.
So the way we do distribution is we look at the vehicles that are currently coming into a network, and then vehicles going out of a network. So in this case, the majority of traffic becoming to from Diversion at this intersection at Rochester Road. We did talk to MDOT updating the signal timing at this intersection to accommodate additional traffic volumes. This signal is operating at 120 seconds with minimal time to the side street, because at the time they did the signal timing, there really wasn't any traffic on Diversion. But with an increase in traffic volume on this approach, we would be looking at updating the timing to increase the green time for vehicles on Diversion. So that'll allow this to operate much better than it currently does right now. So we've already talked to MDOT about doing that.
But still, if you're going west, it makes no sense to go east, go all the way east of Rochester, go into a light that you're going to have to change timing on, that who knows how well that's going to work, versus just jumping onto First Street and getting over to Catalpa and going south on Livernois or west from there.
The values you're showing here, Julie, are measured values, correct? From traffic counts?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Are these measured values on the sheet? These are from the traffic count work you did on the street.
Yes, these are the counts that we did perform. So this is the AM and this is the PM traffic volume. So it's AM/PM vehicles per hour that you're seeing. So even if we were to distribute, the 40 vehicles out in the morning and say half of them went towards Livernois, that's 20 vehicles on adding on First Street, which really is not a significant volume on First Street. And in the afternoon, we're looking at 40 in. So even if I said half, 25 are coming in, it's really not a significant number on First Street. Really, we looked at First Street, and it's a 22-foot wide roadway, which is relatively wide with a center line striping. There are some things that we could recommend to the city that they could consider to do some traffic calming along this roadway that may help mitigate some of the existing operational issues that the residents have brought up on this road. The first may be to just add edge line striping along the areas where you don't have on-street parking. That will help to narrow the roadway visually and reduce those speeds that they are seeing on this roadway. And there's other things that the city may want to consider on First Street to help mitigate speeds. But as far as the traffic volumes, the volumes on this roadway are consistent with the type of roadway which is this collector roadway.
I think you make an important point there, which we made at the last meeting, but all should keep in mind this project is bordered by First and Diversion. Those are not residential streets. Those are collector roads. It's very clear in the master plan from 2014. I don't know if that condition preceded it, but I suspect it did. But those are collector roads. They're functioning as collector roads, which is that those smaller residential side streets dump their traffic onto these roads to get out to the main highways. Yana, do you have anyone else waiting?
There are 3 more people waiting, so.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, who are we speaking with?
Good evening. My name is Michael Grammatico. I'm at
Hi, Michael.
3139. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm at 3139 Bay Point in Rochester Hills.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Milia, thank you. Mr. Milia said earlier there was a consultant from CoStar. That is me. I've been working with Mr. Randazzo for the past 6 or so years. And I believe earlier it was Mr. Gostin who didn't know the health of, let's say, the multifamily market in Rochester. So the company I work for, we gather all of the commercial real estate data throughout the United States, and we specialize in multifamily. And believe it or not, there's only just over 1,900 available apartments in the city of Rochester. The vacancy rate is about 4.5%, and that's down from last year at this time. Last year at this time, it was 6.6%. And from what we're forecasting for the next 4 years, we're seeing a very low vacancy rate for the next 4 years at roughly anywhere from 4.3 to 4.5%. Now, you can look at that a couple different ways. To me, that shows there's a lot of demand within the city for multifamily units. Also, we also track demographics. The population growth for the next 5 years, ages 20 to 29, is actually negative, roughly 4.5%. Does that mean there's a lack of, let's say, affordable housing or available housing? Possibly. There is positive population growth for ages 30 to 39, but that's in the age of you're starting to buy homes. And then the age above that, 40 to 54, we're actually seeing some negative growth as well. So does that mean there is a demand for multifamily? In my opinion, there is. We've seen a lot of building take place in Royal Oak, Birmingham, Ferndale. That's seen a lot of beautiful buildings go up, and those downtowns have increased with restaurants, shops. It created a lot of foot traffic. Brings you to my second point. We know what times we're living in. Retail has taken a major hit, and I think it might take another major hit as well. However, there are people still investing in the city. For example, Silver Spoon moving to their new space a couple of years back, the new Cruise and Mirror restaurant. It's all bringing life to the downtown area. And I think if we can make this a little bit more walkable with another 100 units, I think people will make more of an investment and maybe stretch out the downtown area to include Walnut or even east of the downtown to get a little bit more retail or just more office buildings as well. So I believe this is very positive for the city. I see a lot of growth coming from this. I was at the meeting in early March where a lot of people were still wanting a sleepy Rochester. I think we're well beyond that. Rochester Hills are very desirable areas. People want to live here. And I think this is a viable project to bring the people in that will invest more money within the city. So I thank you for your time. I think this is a great project. And everyone have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling in. Sienna? Good evening. Hi, who are we speaking with?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. This is William Martinez calling, and I'm an office tenant at 438 Main Street in Mr. Chrisman's building.
Good evening.
And thank you, sir. And thank you to the Planning Commission. I think that listening to this meeting and watching what the Planning Commission and yourself, Mr. Chairman, has done with this particular developer over the last 3 years, my hats off to yourself and the Planning Commission. When I see the report where we went from a score of 8 to a score of 16 today, I say that this is a private developer working with the municipal entity at its best. It was interesting to hear Mr. Grammatico's comments. I love to see shops and restaurants as a variety of things for my staff to do. And you do see retail closing and struggling as a result of COVID-19, which is unfortunate. Right below me, Chemical Bank, I just surprised. I was walking in my building and they've elected to move out. And to my knowledge, there's not a tenant moving back into that building. So Mr. Chrisman didn't have a specific answer. Yes, the bank did sell, but apparently I think it's PNC that bought Chemical Bank, just didn't see enough traffic at that location to warrant keeping it. So I do think that having additional people live near downtown or downtown would certainly benefit all of the retailers. It's been great to see everybody back out walking about since the governor has eased some of the restrictions. And I myself am a multi-state, multi-unit franchise operator. I would love to, my businesses are all located out of state. I've had several conversations with some of the retailers in the area. I would love to bring another business into downtown Rochester. I do question if there's enough foot traffic. It is exciting to see. I think that there's a change going on at the on Walnut. I think there's a church being transformed into, I believe, a coffee shop. And so there are some great, exciting things happening in downtown Rochester, and we all, all of us need more options. And I think those options follow having more residents live downtown. So again, I think this is an excellent demonstration of the Planning Commission and yourself, Mr. Chairman, of guiding a developer to success and watching the developer comply with the Planning Commission's requests. So I would score both people, the developer and the Planning Commission, here an A+ on bringing this project to fruition.
Thank you, sir, for calling. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sienna, do you have more? Sienna, anyone else waiting to speak? You're on mute.
Hi there.
There you go. We can hear you now.
Hello there, Bashar. I was from 111 South Street. I was there at the last meeting. I want to say hello to everybody. And again, our downtown, just like the last gentleman that was on, our downtown need the foot traffic. We need the people in there. I am the oldest repair shop there now, and we can always use more business. And that area has always been empty. I think even the people using the trail would want something nice like that to look at as they pass Mill Street or diversion there. So again, it's an A+ project, and I would really like the city to consider it and go through with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for calling.
Have a good day. Night. Thank you.
Sienna.
That is it.
Okay, very good. Very good. Mr. Milia still has the floor here, commissioners. Do you have any more questions for him?
Comment, Mr. Chairman, if I could make just a little bit of a follow-up.
Please.
I appreciate the resident comments. I think it added another dimension of perspective, some of which we've covered. And I just wanted to circle back to my concern about the apartment concept as a use. And I wasn't really challenging previous reports stating the need or the desire. I was really more looking at the impact that it has. Some of them were stated traffic, and there's associated elements to that too. And I'm just curious about, not just from a developer standpoint, what is the impact that you'll see in an urban area? I know there's good with bad. I mean, foot traffic and additional commerce is the good side, but what is the bad side or perceived as a negative impact? I'd like that to be talked about a little bit more. I mean, there's a transient nature to apartment living. What's the impact of that? The things I see happening in town now, and I don't want to relate that just to apartment living, but I see things happening that, like jaywalking is the commerce activity, foot traffic stemming from Main Street to the streets that offshoot Main Street. People kind of walking out between cars, crossing 3rd Street, 2nd Street, 4th Street, not obeying, cross traffic for pedestrians. Those things are going to get exaggerated with additional traffic before potential pedestrian vehicle conflicts. Those are some things, and I don't know if you attribute or can attribute that to apartment living, but maybe there's a little bit more depth to the question of what's the impact. And I don't have the answers. I'm just raising some questions, but I think there were some previous reports that the commission has heard, and it's been years now, but I think those are worth hearing again. And I just wanted to state it wasn't really me saying, is there a demand for apartment living? I think, yeah, people will want to live there, but the transient nature of it, and that's not a bad word, but that is true in apartment living. They're there for a while and they move on, and some of those people will move into houses in the area because that's what their goal is to get established in Rochester and stay in Rochester. But not everyone is like that. Those are just some thoughts, and I want to keep it balanced. I don't want to be negative on it because I do see the benefit of more dense living closer to downtown Main Street. I do appreciate what that will bring. I just want to make sure we balance that with other impacts that are going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Sienna, you have another caller.
Yes. Kara?
Yes, hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Your
Hi.
name, please?
Kara Krupa. I'm
Welcome,
at 16.
Kara.
Hi, thank you.
Well, what is your address?
1651 West Avon Road, Rochester Hills.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm just calling. I have a business in downtown Rochester. I've been there 13 years. I am calling in support of this project. I think now more than ever, us downtown retailers are going to need all the support and local traffic that we can get. I think we need to be mindful of the fact that this is going to be what's happened in the last 4 months may had a profound impact on retail and commercial real estate, and it may be very long lasting. And I think we should do everything we can to draw residents and foot traffic to the downtown area to help keep it robust and to promote growth going forward. Secondarily, I think in terms of the traffic, I'm not sure when this last traffic study was done, but I know that almost everyone I know is working from home these days, and that's got to have a profound impact, of course, on the traffic at rush hour, I would think. So I don't know how long it will be like that, but from what I hear from a lot of my friends and clients who are in HR and in high levels of corporate America, that's going to be the new normal going forward. So I think that there's potential that we will see less traffic at those intersections during rush hour. Mostly, I think that we need to do everything we can to keep Rochester growing, especially now. And I think this project is a huge step in that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling in. We appreciate it. Julie, I don't have your study in front of me. When was this most recent study done?
This was done, go back. I know it was done pre-COVID. Does that answer your question?
The cover shows February of 2020.
It does.
Yeah, I think the counts were done back in 2019.
So I don't know if there's value in doing another one right now. At least the counting portion of it, because things are changing out there too rapidly.
Correct. Yeah. We would just say pre-COVID. Yeah.
Dennis, there's another call.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and put them on. Good evening.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. This is Tom Bielitsa from 464 Hellman. I'd like to, thank you. I had a couple comments. One about the comment made that we would like to see this building from the trail, which I disagree with completely. I actually walked the trail yesterday to see what that area looked like, and right now it's very natural, very nice to see all the trees and shrubs. And I also don't understand how they decided that the trees that were landmark trees now are no longer considered valuable and they can just take them out. And the third point, also regarding trees, is that the landscaping trees that we see in the picture looks like they're about 30 feet tall, and I can't believe that's the case if you scale them to how tall that building is. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Vidya or Nick, can you address the subject of the landmark trees?
I will defer to Nick. Nick is the city forester. So initially the applicant had submitted a tree survey with a few landmark trees, but I believe Nick actually visited the site and checked out the trees that they had specified. So I'll defer to Nick.
Yeah, 95%, 99% of them are all not even eligible to be a landmark tree. They're box elders, cottonwoods, things like that. Size doesn't, again, almost every developer that comes in, when they hit the 20-inch or 24-inch mark, they think it could be a landmark. But I did visit the site in the last fall, and there are no landmark trees.
Okay.
Large trees, not landmark trees.
But I
Big
suspect this site had been probably cleared in the past, and these are
We
probably
took-
volunteer trees that have just shown up.
Exactly. And it's especially in the valley, that's where the majority of the trees are. And when you plant new species along that trail, like they talked about, in 10 years, it's a whole different canopy that we're creating there. So, and in 10 years, the trees that are in that valley will be dead because they're saturated. So sometimes you make upgrades when you plant new species.
Okay. Is the caller still on?
No, they hung up.
Looks like they've left. Okay. Any more calls at this point?
Not at this time.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to take a couple minutes here. This is more for the benefit of Sarah and Christian. It's been 5 months now since we had the public hearing. And on the night of the public hearing, I explained to the commissioners that this had gone on for so long and had so many iterations that I found it personally necessary to put a list together of points about the project to help me bring my focus back into order about where we are. And I know there have been changes made since the public hearing 5 months ago. I see it primarily as shrinking the mass of the building. I know there are fewer units, et cetera, but I want to just go through these quick as an update or a reminder to the commissioners who have been around, and then for Christian and Sarah. So as a result of the extended period of time this project's been underway by the Planning Commission, and that's since late 2017, I found it necessary to create a summary of key points for myself in order to fairly evaluate the project. The initial site plan and concept submitted have changed significantly since the project was first proposed. So the summary has helped me summarize current conditions. Number one, Riverfront is proposed to be built on a parcel of land that is primarily zoned RM2 multiple family residential. As far as I know, it's been that way for some time. So obviously city fathers and mothers in the past deemed that this was a good spot for multiple housing. Or permits the developer to request special exception approval to exceed height and setback requirements under certain conditions. Keep in mind, I believe they could go as high as 8 stories here with special exception, if I recall, but they're not asking for that. The site is properly zoned for the project. Riverfront's proposed to be built on a parcel of property that's classified in the 2014 master plan as multiple family residential, 2 to 3 stories, in an area of the city called potential intensity change. The site is properly classified by the 2014 master plan. The site is appropriate for the developer to request special projects approval by the Rochester City Council. That conditions provided for in the ordinance. The proposed riverfront project meets the city's sustainability criteria, and I point out that it continues to meet it here 5 months later. We saw the results earlier, including for traffic and landscape considerations. The developer has submitted a significant traffic study document which shows that the project will insignificantly add to traffic in its immediate and general area. And you met Ms. Kroll tonight. It was performed by Julie, who's a Michigan licensed professional civil engineer and also certified by the International Transportation Institute, which for the civilians among us is the standard, the gold standard in terms of conditions that are used to evaluate these kinds of projects. The traffic study evaluated potential traffic using the sustainability criteria by including traffic from other recently site plan approved projects, including Cedarbrook, Overbrook, Blossom Mills. The traffic study separately also analyzed 5% annual increases of potential traffic on top of the sample calendar data counts. Neither analysis showed a significant increase in traffic load on the roads and intersections analyzed, such as to require any modifications of current roads or intersections. I point out in my experience that it's common for people to look at a building with 130 apartments and say they're all going to come and go at the same time. That's just simply not the case. And the distribution that she explained actually shows why. And remember, these are pre-COVID numbers. I suspect that they would be substantially reduced if the measurements were done today. The project fronts on and is served by First Street and Diversion Streets. Both of these are classified by the city's master plan as collector roads. They are not residential roads. They have houses on them from in the past, but they are collector roads and they perform accordingly, which means they collect and distribute traffic from the main roads to the residential streets. And obviously, because of that, their volume is perceived, particularly by the people who live on them, as much higher. The project significantly adds to the city's rental and single-family owned housing stock. Since the rental units are proposed to include many single-bedroom market-rate apartment units, it could be argued that the project may add to the stock of affordable housing in the city. Sarah had asked me earlier today about affordable housing, and I said that we have, you know, that's a nebulous term that's used quite often in this planning business, and we have a promise from Vidya to bring forward an explanation about that at some meeting when we don't have a full agenda. But these are not luxury apartments by any means. The project's proposed to be built on a former contaminated industrial site. It's a former industrial site. It is contaminated as it sits there today. The site may be eligible for consideration of brownfield tax credit status, which would be, divert some of the new tax dollars generated by the project to the developer to repay for any potential cleanup work. Those who were at the meeting heard me ask the developer to consider whether or not he would do so. And he committed at that meeting that he would not apply for brownfield tax credits to come back to him as part of his cost of this project. The project at our request now includes the remaining vacant land to the south up to the Clinton River Trail. Mr. Randazzo bought this land, and we all know, have been dealing with this for a while. There's floodway, floodplain, and upland as part of that plan, but it's quite attractive. It's vacant with scrub trees and some really attractive ones on, but he's proposed to fold it into this development, which of course makes the density of his development much less than it might be had he just used the original piece. We encouraged him to do that, obviously, for the benefit of both the project and the enjoyment of the tenants and also those who use the trail. The project's proposed to be built on a site that is adjacent to some of the tallest buildings in the city. By my count, this will be the 5th tall building, by our standards anyway, in this fairly newly formed cluster of buildings. It's not out, frankly, like Cedarbrook, where it's a 6-story, 6-story building effectively, sitting out alone with nothing competitive. You saw the silhouette shown earlier tonight. It would not be the tallest of the buildings in the cluster of 5. I believe the Lofts building might be a little bit different. The project's proposed to be built not set back from First Street and diversion lot lines, but will have public sidewalks along these streets as required. I just note that the Loft project across the street on First Street also has no setbacks from either First Street or the alleyway. And for whatever reason was approved without even a sidewalk along First Street. This project that we're looking at here has the circulation around the complete project as would typically be required. And the last point I make is that This project is not proposed on Main Street. In no way does this endanger our downtown two-story older development. We've fought very hard to preserve that, as you know, and this is proposed to be built away. It's easy to dismiss the comments that are made about COVID and the impact it may have on this community. But we've already passed the point of encouraging merchants, restaurants, and like Kara, who called a little while ago, to move into our downtown. And they moved in there and they're functioning, but some of them are failing. And this project is sort of off to the edge, but it will provide significant foot traffic. And my guess is that if this project's successful, well, as you know, there's another one proposed just further down Diversion Street at the south side of the bridge. People would like to live in Rochester. People would like to live in Royal Oak. It's safe. It's a great place to spend your days working from home and then walking the streets. And as time goes on, a lot of the services are going to be within walking distance out your door. I think it's time, and there's always time for more questions and there's always time for more tweaks, but I think it's time that the commission, in fairness to this developer and to ourselves, move this project along, whether that's through approval or denial. I think it's time to move this along. I've left you speechless.
Chairman, if I could just answer Commissioner Gasson's question.
Please do.
This is Blaine Wing, I'm the city manager. I was able to pull up our current master plan, and within that document, it did provide some of those answers. Again, this is a document that was, going back to November of 2014. So, a little bit ago, but it's our current one as we're working towards our next master plan. But the answer to a couple of the questions is current was single family residential is at 38.97%, so nearing 40% of our community. Two family residentials at 5.18, and multiple family residentials at 9%. And then looking at the really growth area for population, which is the millennial is the highest per the 2020 estimated 2020 census, and then the 2010 census, and then the projected from the SEMCOG numbers for 2030. And what they're noting is this generation has the potential to increase the demand for multiple family housing. That's illustrated as that's being the 2020 is the estimated, again, from this 2014 document, and then with the projected for 2030.
Mr. Gasson, does that help? Mr. Gasson must be on mute.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does in terms of, I guess, percentages of those categories. I do appreciate that, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, this is Christian Hauser. I think what you articulated was very well done, and I think you've raised a lot of good points. I would also take note of the point factor in the sustainable Rochester formula. I think that they've done a very fine job of working within the confines of this document and this evaluation. I actually personally sat on the committee that came up with this several years ago. So I'm familiar with the process. I'm familiar with why it was done, and it's there for a reason. And I think that if we look at the points that have been assessed, it certainly falls within the criteria that's sustainable and it meets the city goals. And if we're going to have a a formula if we're going to have a development program that we ask developers in this city to follow, and they meet the criteria, I think that ought to be recognized. Similarly, I agree with you on the traffic study. Let's face it, traffic is always going to be an issue in this city. Okay, it's been an issue since I moved here nearly 20 years ago, and it's always going to be something that we have to deal with. The developer has procured a study. It seems to be incredibly thorough. The presenter is extremely knowledgeable about the subject matter, and based on the pre-COVID analysis, and if we move forward and we see a reduction in traffic, I understand First Street can be, a little bit fast. I understand that the residents who live there might have some concerns, but I candidly think that those concerns might be more relevant and germane to the police department to step up, a little bit of enforcement area over there. I don't necessarily think that's a burden that ought to fall on the developer. So, those are my comments on some of the issues that seem to be more pressing with the community and more pressing with what we've got in front of us. So thank you for summarizing. It certainly helped me as a new member, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to let you know how I felt. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Christian.
Yeah.
Dean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hate to sound like a broken record, and I do appreciate the efforts made by the applicant. I'm still not comfortable with the project as it stands. Won't be supporting it for moving on. And if it comes to council in the same iteration, I won't be supporting it there either. So concerns are, there's no performance bond in place. There's no agreement that I think is necessary to satisfy some of the concerns we discussed revolving around that. Still have an issue with traffic. As I said, I had concerns that I voiced earlier. I still don't know that we're quite where I'd like to be. So that's an issue. The density of this project, it's pretty dense. There's a lot of units. There's going to be a lot of cars. It's going to change the tenor of the area. So it's the most kind of deeply integrated site in a residential area that we're considering of this size for a special project. So it is unique in that, and I think we need to treat it as such. I think we had a standard for materials that projects like First Street lofts were held to. I don't know that this project is being held to the same standards. I think there's a document out there that the folks at First Street Lofts provided at the public hearing that details all their concerns, which include, how do their people get in and out of there when streets are shut down for the construction of this over up to possibly 5 years off and on. That concept in general is concerning just for residents of the city of Rochester. The wear and tear on the streets due to the construction vehicles that are going to be running around and doing the things that they do. Who's going to pay for all the damage that's done on the streets, because it will be done. Having to put up with all the road closures and the noise and everything else that's going to go along with it. All things that I'm concerned about. Stress on police and fire. You're going to add, hundreds of people and issues, and as Mr. Gasson mentioned, you got issues with jaywalking, whatever else. But everything from health issues to domestic issues to everything that comes along with it. Potential fires, all of that. That all puts stress on our system, and it increases the man hours and/or the need for feet on the ground. So these are all issues that I'm concerned about, and therefore I won't support it. Thanks.
Anyone else?
we look at the additional domestic potential issues as an opportunity to hire another police officer on the force? I believe this project would raise considerable tax money for the city, which likely could fund a additional police officer or two. That might mitigate that concern, Mr. Ravacqua.
We're already looking at a deficit due to the fire department that they're hoping projects like this will make up for. So in my opinion, the money's spent.
Video, what do we need to do? What does a motion need to say? Is it site plan approval, special projects approval, and then sending on? Tell us what we.
The Planning Commission has got a right over the site plan, but the City Council is the final say on special projects. But since a special project cannot be acted on without a site plan, you're sending the whole thing over to the City Council. You have three options.
Special exception, special projects?
No, I'm sorry, site plan and special projects approval, not special exception. Site plan and special projects approval. And you can either make a motion to approve with conditions, or motion to deny with reasons why. And you have to send it to council. Council will then decide either to go with your motion, or council can overrule and make the final decision on a special project.
Okay.
So
Chairman,
three actions before you: approve with conditions, or deny.
Okay, thank you. Yes, David.
Just a clarification, if I understood the planner correctly. If it's forwarded to city council, not approved or not recommended, that is just the special projects component. The site plan still has to be approved by the planning commission. The council can't act on the site plan without the commission first approving the site plan. Is that
correct?
So is it more than one motion?
We have typically handled all special projects in a single motion, so I wouldn't want to handle this any differently. It's just that even though they are separate actions and the council's jurisdiction is on the special projects, the site plan and the special projects are innately tied together. Okay. So any motion you make will go before council. Even if your motion is to deny, it will still be on the council's agenda for action, because council does have the right to make a final decision on the special project.
Then this question is for Attorney Craig. I think we have 6 members here. Am I counting correctly?
You have 7.
What do we need to approve? Since it's a commission of 9, do we need a 5 to pass on?
You need 5 of 7 tonight.
Or a majority of present tonight?
Yes.
What is that?
You need a majority of your board, so that would be 5 of 7 tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to just share a few thoughts. I really appreciate the presentation this evening, and I spent a lot of time. I was not a part of the committee or the commission back in March, but had followed along a little bit and then spent considerable amount of time reviewing. I really appreciate the change to the facade by reducing the front entryway there. I think overall the project, it reduced that heftiness and has a better feel and scale. When you look at, surrounding projects, there was some concern brought up over the density. This is a multifamily. It should have greater density. You look at, there's a 6-story unit that was approved, apartment building, or I believe apartment building approved across the street. This is less than that. I think it has greater outdoor space than that unit. I really like all of the green space. I think it'll be an improvement to the trail today. I went out and walked it with my kids and took a look, because I really wanted to get a good feel for it. And the vegetation that's there today is not the best looking at. It is green, which is nice. But I think if they're thoughtful with the landscaping plan, which it appears to be, there'll be some great things. I do have a question. There's been talk of a development agreement, and I don't see anything wrong with doing that. Or the bonding, are those things, if we approve today, that we can approve with conditions that we want to see those, or do those have to be worked out in
No, we
advance
can
of?
approve it with those conditions today, and
Okay.
then they would be worked out.
Okay.
If I may just add to Sarah's comment, the application is not seeking a deviation from density. They are within the density that is permitted by the ordinance for their lot size. So the reason it's a special project is because they're seeking a deviation from the setbacks, not even building height. The district does permit you to go up to 8 stories and 100 feet. So
The special exception is the setback.
the special project, yes.
Yeah.
Was the First Street lofts also a special project with the setbacks?
Yes. First Street Lofts was also a special project with a lot more deviations.
Okay, and was there a public contribution from that project as well?
Yes, that is mandatory for every special project. It was a while ago, so sorry, I cannot recollect exactly what the public contribution of First Street Lofts was. I don't know, maybe Nick or Blaine remember, but it's been a while. A lot of special projects, so I don't remember what exactly their contribution was.
Okay. Just to clarify too, the Clinton River landing, is that right below the bridge there on the Clinton River by Diversion Street?
On
Yes,
the
that's
east
the water
side.
town hall. Yep.
It's on the east.
The east. The east side, there's like a canoe rack today.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Vidya, for clarification for tonight, if we do push this forward to council, are we pushing through all 3 phases or just phase 1?
No, you are approving all of the phases of the project, and you would add any conditions, because all the elements of every phase have been included and provided over here. And the Planning Commission does have the authority to approve a phased site plan, as long as all the details are shown, which is included in this. So you are approving all the phases. You can, of course, add conditions such as a development agreement and bond to work out the details. You can also add conditions that you would like to see the development agreement once it's executed with the city attorney, so that it's got all the elements that you expect to have in it.
Mr. Commissioner?
Yes.
I think my question might have just been answered, but with respect to the conditions, we can be vague from the standpoint of passing it with the condition that a development agreement and a performance bond be part of the process. Is that correct?
Yes, you don't need to hammer out the exact details of the development agreement, which will be worked out with Attorney Kraft, because it's all legal language.
Right, and that's what I needed to know. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you very much.
Jeff, you're comfortable with that?
Yes, well, so this is an advisory, because the planning commission wouldn't enter into a development agreement. It would be city council. So if there's specific terms of a development agreement that you would like to see as part of your condition, I would include that in your motion to move it forward, if that's the choice of planning commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is there anybody who can elaborate on the performance bond? I know these are common in, construction projects, but what, it sounded like it can be used to complete kind of minor things like landscaping and such. What kind of recourse does it really provide? I know they can be costly. Just kind of want to be able to weigh if that's something that we want to ensure we have.
I would let Attorney Kraft elaborate in case I'm wrong to correct me, but typically performance bond are accepted in various forms. It can be a letter of credit from a bank, or it's a cash bond. On a project of this scope, it's typically not a cash bond, it's a letter of credit, or it is a guarantee that is deposited like a bond with the city's treasurer. And the development agreement will outline at what point of time that bond will actually be called in. Like if For example, if a statement was made 3 years down the road, you have completed only 10% of project, the bond at that point can be seized in order to demolish whatever has been built and clean up and restore the property. If the project is 80% complete, the bond can be seized to finish up the rest of it, or the bond money can be used to force the developer in order to complete the project, because typically municipalities are not in the business of trying to build sites. That's not a responsibility we want to take. But it is basically an incentive when you're holding the applicant's money or bond to force them to complete a project.
Okay.
Jeff, anything?
No, I think that's fair. The city doesn't want to get into the business of finishing projects, because then what do you do with it? So I think video is right on that.
Would anyone want to take a shot at a motion in either direction? And we'll help you flesh it out.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Please, David.
Could the planner elaborate on something she said earlier? The only variance is the setback. The use is permitted, but it's just the setbacks, and all other ordinance requirements are met. Is that correct? Just the setbacks?
Yes. The deviation, which makes it a special project at this point of time, is essentially the setbacks. If you look at the zoning ordinance for RM2 district, which is what this property is zoned, section 903, special exception in the RM2 district, subsection 2 says, multiple family dwellings of more than 2 stories, but not more than 8 stories, and 100 feet building height. They are allowed as a special exception, but in order to go the higher height, they have to increase the setbacks that are required. The applicant is not complying with the setbacks, which is what is triggering the whole reason for the special projects.
So as a special exception, the previous public hearing considered that as a part of that public hearing as a special exception, not just a special project? Or is that a additional approval that needs to be stated in a motion?
No, I think since we are not considering this a special exception, because we would treat it as a special exception provided they were complying with, there are certain minimum setbacks required for the RM2. As a special exception for a taller building, your setbacks increase beyond the minimum setbacks required. Now, the applicant is not complying with the increased setbacks either. So the whole thing is a deviation. So you don't need to make a special exception call. It is site plan and special projects. That covers all of it.
Can I restate that, because I was still not sure? The use is permitted as a special exception.
Provided they meet all the increased setback requirements.
But since they do not meet the setback requirements, you're saying the use as a special exception isn't a component of the approval?
Correct.
That doesn't make sense to me.
It is a little complicated. So buildings up to 2 stories tall are principal permitted use in the RM2. Buildings up to 8 stories tall and 100 feet are permitted as a special exception, provided you increase the setbacks for every so much foot increase in the overall building height. Now, the applicant has got a taller building, but is not just not meeting the basic setback requirements, they're not meeting the increased setback requirements for a taller building either. They are seeking all of it as a deviation. When you already are considering the deviation as a special project, trying to also call it special exception is redundant.
Thank you.
Well, a motion would then say site plan approval and recommendation for approval of special exception to the city council with the condition that performance bonds be required.
Special project, not special exception, special project.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's going to be 10:30 and it's very confusing.
We have to get it right.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I could just make a further comment. I appreciate your patience. Just generally stating that I appreciate the project as it is today, as where it's come from in terms of listening to our concerns and responding with the development proposed. I appreciate that it's a former contaminated site and they're dealing with that as a developer, not as a city issue. And now I understand the variance that we're asking for as a special project more clearly. Thank you, Madam Planner. I do, however, still have, even though it's a permitted use as a special exception, as the impacts that it has on the community as it's kind of nestled into the residential area. So I'm kind of on the fence as a overall approval of that. But I'm leaning more in the approval category based on that fact that underlining it's a permitted use as a special exception. But I'll say that with the burdens that are going to come with it, in my opinion, as impacts to the area, the administration and the leadership of the city, beyond the planning commission, may have to make adjustments if there are impacts and burdens identified for this and other things like it. To the downtown area. I think hopefully it's outweighed by the benefits of foot traffic and activity and energy and so forth that happen as a result of something like this. But I have hesitation.
I appreciate that, David. I think it's important for each of us here to keep in mind what our role is. This is the Planning Commission. We're not like Stewart and Dean. We're not the elected representatives of the people. Our job is to look at the nuts and bolts of the site. If we feel that it meets the nuts and bolts test sufficiently, it's not inappropriate to send it on to our elected leaders to make those final decisions. And that's what I'm encouraging us to do tonight.
Mr. Chairman, this is Christian. I'd like to make a motion to approve subject to certain conditions, if that's okay.
Please elaborate.
Okay. I would like to, and I apologize if I get this wrong, so please bear with me, but I would like to make a motion to approve subject to the execution of a development agreement being entered into between the developer and the city that contains specific criteria dealing with the time for commencement and the time for completion, and that the developer post a bond, a performance bond, in an amount equal to the cost to perform the work in question. And I'm happy to ask questions or modify that as necessary.
Vidya?
The motion is a recommendation to the city council. It's not a motion to approve, it's a recommendation to the city council.
Right.
To approve
Understood.
special project.
Do we approve
Okay.
the site plan though?
Yes, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. They can act to approve the site plan and send a recommendation
Correct.
on the special projects to the city council, correct?
That's correct. The Planning Commission is still the site plan approving body.
So Christian, could you modify it to recommend approval of the site plan and recommend forwarding the special project video
Yes, you
consideration
are,
to the
you are
city
approving
council?
the site plan and recommending the special project to the city council with conditions.
With the condition that a
Let me try-
performance bond be required.
Sure. Let me try this again, okay? I'd like to make a motion to recommend the site plan and to recommend the special project be approved, subject to the execution of a development agreement entered into between the developer and the city that contains specific criteria dealing with the time for commencement and the time for completion, and that the developer post a performance bond in the amount equal to the cost to perform the work in question.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Go ahead, Vidya.
I'm so sorry. Last correction.
No, it's fine.
You are approving the site plan and making a recommendation on the special project. You're not recommending the site plan because you are the final authority on the site plan. So you're
All right.
approving the site plan and recommending the special projects, and rest of the language stays the same. I'm sorry.
You're okay with that, Christian?
I'm fine with that. That's the problem. Do you need me to do it again?
So we have a motion after much wrangling. Do we have support?
Support.
We have a motion and it has been supported. And is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, may I offer a site plan consideration for the motion that comments raised regarding the sidewalk on the north side of the circulation drive be added to the motion of approval for the site plan?
So that's a sidewalk on the north side of this is the drive on the south side of the building.
Correct.
You want it adjacent to the structure, not across the road.
No, an addition sidewalk in addition to
One
the
on each side.
the townhouses on the north side.
Okay.
It's a small portion of that drive.
Christian, are you okay with that?
Absolutely. No issues with that addition of the sidewalk.
And Sarah went running off, which means
I was looking at my plans.
one of the
One
kids
other
escaped.
was the added bench and redistribution of the trash containers in the pocket park.
Say that again. I interrupted you.
The other item was the added pedestrian bench and redistribution of trash receptacles at the pocket park.
Christian, okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? David, does that complete your comments?
Yes, thank you for your patience, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, no problem. Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Okay, I'll make a couple comments.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't want to bug you.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I didn't want us to go home too early here. I want to keep this.
God love you.
At least we don't have to like drive home and do all that and stuff, right? I agree with Mr. Gasson. I mean, this is a difficult decision. I do, last meeting I said that I thought the project was too big. It got smaller, which I appreciate. It didn't get a lot smaller, but it got somewhat smaller. So, I mean, that's a gray area, I guess, for me. The performance bond and stuff, I absolutely agree with that. And I don't mean this for this applicant. I think we should do that going forward with projects, especially, there's probably just good practices anyway, but I think that, who knows what the economy is going to be. So I think we're just covering ourselves as a city. A couple comments about traffic. I don't want to sound like a science denier here, but it is, you're going to have more traffic on First Street. I just believe that. That's the way people go to get to Livernois, and that's just an issue that I think is an issue. So I would like to see something from, if this goes forward, I would like to see something from our administration. What are we going to do about that? There's some suggestions for traffic calming. We've talked about stop signs before. So I think, the police chief has said that stop signs make people go faster sometimes. So, I mean, so there's issues. So I'd like Blaine and Nick to come up with something on that. The traffic person, Julie, mentioned something about the light on Rochester Road. That sounds nice, but is that real? I'd like to see something on that. I would like to see the landscaping plan on the trail, maybe beefed up a little bit so you can't see it from the trail. And then I'd also like, and this is an issue I've talked about all over town, is, we have these developments and they wreck the roads, and then, we're left with holding the bag. So again, that's not to this applicant specifically, but that's something to talk about in general. So
Would you want to suggest any of those items be added to the motion? So they're in writing?
Well, I would, but I think, administration has to work that out, but then also to me, they would have to be taken care of for me to vote for it at the city council. So, those are some of the issues I have. And then, another thing is, the building materials, I think we approved some of it, but I think some of the building materials could be of a higher quality. So, I know I'm kind of throwing out some of my own ideas here. But I think those would need to be addressed for me to vote for this at the city council level. But I agree with Mr. McGee. I think it is probably time to move this forward to the city council for a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Madam Clerk.
Hauser,
Christian, you have to vote.
I'm sorry. Yes. Motion approved.
King,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
No.
McGee.
Yes,
Think I got everyone?
I think you did.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone, for your incredible patience. It's very much appreciated. Mr. Milia, thank you for listening to us and, moving forward, the next things you have to do. And we wish you and Mr. Randazzo the best.
Thank everybody for all their time and effort. We look forward to working through the development agreement and subsequently to the city council. We thank you as well.
Thank you. Okay, folks, next item is number 8, miscellaneous. I dare anybody to bring something up. What do you have in the way of miscellaneous? Anything?
I have
anything from you?
Yes. I'll also ask Nick to back me up if you guys need additional information, but we would like to request a special meeting for August 20th.
Come on, it's summertime.
It should not take that long. Nick's words, not mine.
Okay.
But the 2 items that are on the agenda, if you guys would be so kind to honor our request for that August 20th meeting.
I am okay with that. Does anyone object to that?
No objection.
We're with you.
Okay, these will be for amendments and revisions to the gas station located at 100 University, in addition to the Gateway Center project at 103, 125.
Good.
South.
Very, very pleased to see that finally moving on.
And Vidya, you won't have to write a report. I can do it on those because they're just facade changes. Save you that hassle.
Thanks. Thank you.
Right.
Lucky you.
Ask, at this point, public comment. Have we received any other communications?
We have not.
I have to say that's the first time we've experienced, Mayor, you've probably seen this before, but people calling in and the system works pretty good.
Yeah, we've never had that many people call into city council as called in tonight. So you're right, the system is working, I guess.
Yeah, it's awkward. We understand that, but they called and they got their say, and that's very important. Okay, any other items before I adjourn this meeting? Thank you all for your patience and sticking with us, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Hope you